Just one third down conversion tonight. Make it 2 on a big run from Avery Johnson all the way to the end zone. How about that?
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
And now Ollie Gordon breaks the tackle. Ollie Gordon with running room. Inside the 10. House call. 46 yards for OG2.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Brooks getting the edge. Brooks. Touchdown, Texas Tech.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
On second down, Bowman locks this one into coverage, and he's picked again. Guess who? Tamari Henderson with his second interception and his third takeaway today.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
There goes Green, scrambling, and that speed inside the 10, and he'll go all the way. Touchdown! Nobody ever got him.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Lichtenberg trying to throw his first pass, going downfield. Oh my goodness! What an interception! Kobe Bryant. Da-da-da, da-da-da.
Now here's David Smoke and Craig Smoke.
Every Tuesday and Thursday at 4:45 or so, Craig Smoke has Off the Radar, which is usually kind of some, not offbeat, but at times, college football stories. One of them, I'm sure, will be the NBA Finals with the Celtics and the Mavericks. But one of the parts about the Celtics and Mavericks, which I never put two and two together, is this story. That their head coach, Joe Mazzulla, is a West Virginia grad, played basketball there, and also was a little bit of a, at times, chip on his shoulder, a little rebellious or whatever. So West Virginia, home of Joe Mazzulla, the head coach of the world champion Boston Celtics.
Yeah, good for West Virginia fans that get to see one of their guys go and win an NBA title. Thanks for that start to the show as a Mavericks fan. yeah, good for West Virginia though. But yeah, I don't want to do too many congratulations. But the Celtics were the better team, and they got it done last night, as you mentioned, and they are world champions, and deservedly so. It's a really great basketball team, and he did a great job as the coach. It's not always easy to just be an NBA coach or a pro sports coach, but I think in the NBA these days, we've seen our fair share of egos and how guys can just get tossed to the side because of the superstars and just how all that works. And for Boston, they've managed to have a boatload of superstars and also have a young head coach, and it's all blended together really well. Took them a long time to win this latest title. You would think, just based on their history, that sure, they won one like 6 years ago, right? Nope. They won one like 8 years ago, right? Nope. It's been a while. So they got it done this time, and they were the favorites going in, and they were clearly the right pick and the right odds-on favorites because they dominated that series for the most part. So, yeah, good for them and good for Joe Mazzulla and good for West Virginia as a byproduct of all that.
One of the stories, and then we'll get to some other college football, some other notes as well. Dr. Carolyn P. Atkins had a speaking course, a public speaking course at West Virginia. Students, athletes speak out, and apparently she had a massive influence on Mazzulla as he was in college and learning how to release some things that he was feeling. But he is a West Virginia grad alum. Congratulations to him. Now, Louisville, the AD at Louisville saying that it is time now, and I think this is obvious, but time now that what athletic departments, he's speaking for Louisville, is what they need, not what they want to spend money on. And there's a lot of graphics here. We're not going to read all of them, but there's a lot of graphics here in this story. And we'll hear from Tim Sullivan, who wrote the story, at around 4:30 today. I think we're definitely shifting to an attitude of what is needed as opposed to what is wanted. If our marketing department has 8 staff members, do we need 8? If our senior leadership team has 10, do we need 10? That's a scary proposition for people to think about it. And basically all the other quotes that are a part of this story, and Tim Sullivan, again, will join us. We've had him on before to talk Louisville. Just that it is time for not the waterfalls and all of that, not that some programs won't still do that, but it's time that you spend whatever dollar you have, you need to spend it on what matters, and especially since a lot of that money is going to end up going back to the players.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little weird at this point getting so into the weeds on some of these things because, like, it just, I look back to just being a fan of it all, but it's, like, impossible to not have to pay attention to the other things now because they do so directly affect the on the field. Like, they affect recruiting, they affect the type of teams you can put together, they affect what conferences you're in, they affect a lot of different things. So it's necessary to get into the weeds on a lot of topics that I don't know how much people cared about them maybe 15 or 20 years ago, but they weren't as directly related as they are now because of player pay. So this is the era that we're in now, and you heard a lot of boogeyman stuff initially about players getting paid and how that would be the death of the sport and all that. I think that, that was a bit over dramatic, but there was with those warning calls or those scares, there was also in between or around that the talk of, the collateral damage of paying players and what that could turn into, and does everybody quite understand what they're walking into? Now, granted, that was some of the universities saying that, wanting you to pause and not keep walking forward, but I also think there is an element of agents and lawyers and people who stand to benefit of just like bowling through without thinking too much about the collateral damage of it all. And if that's what they needed to do for their clients, so be it. But I think as we've been speeding down this pathway now for a couple of years, you're starting to see, like, we're getting into that time of like, all right, what does that collateral damage look like as we now are allowed to directly pay players, and what could that turn into? And one of the fears, at least mentioned early on, is, other sports and what happens with those, and what happens with money that would, normally go to column A, and now it's instead going to this brand new column C. And so what happens to column A, or what happens to what column B would normally get? So, yeah, I just think that's the reality of every athletic department right now. For the most part, there's certainly some that don't have to worry as much about it in the Big Ten and the SEC. But for everybody else, I think you're scrambling. I think some of those programs are still going to have their ups and downs. Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, they'll probably never feel it because they're just so massive. But even I think some of the non-schools of that breed that are in those conferences with even all the money they're making, I think there's still going to be some tough decisions to probably have to make in some cases. But certainly if you're not in those leagues, then there's inevitably going to be some tough decisions about where the money goes ultimately. And let's face it, as popular as you want women's basketball to be, or as much as you think the men's tournament's undervalued, or if you think baseball's suddenly going to become a big moneymaker, it's all about football, ladies and gentlemen, and it's going to continue to be that way. Now, there might be some money that comes basketball's way eventually, but that's wishful thinking at this point, right? I mean, that's just hopefulness. That's not actual, hey, we've been offered this much more for our basketball broadcast or anything along those lines. That's what you hope if you're Brett Yormark and probably Greg Sankey and everybody else. But, there's going to be tough decisions, and there's going to be less of the waterfalls and the things that we mentioned previously, but there's going to be effect on the sports as well. And I don't pretend to know what that will be, but I think that's inevitable. And I do wonder if we look down the road, I'm not trying to do the whole fear-mongering thing of, like, you can't pay the players because then swimming will cease to, I'm not trying to be like that, but I do wonder, once we get some of these questions about Title IX and whatnot answered, of are we barreling towards where, there's a lot of these Olympic sports that are just going to get, tossed to the wayside, basically. Probably not at Texas, probably not at USC, probably not at schools like that still are making tons of money, but I do think there will be a ripple effect of some sort. I don't know how there won't be at this point. So, that's something you have to keep in mind when you're talking about investments and the money that's coming in is if you want to continue to make money, a lot of that that otherwise wouldn't be going to paying football players is now going to be going to paying football players.
By the way, there's a lawsuit in Florida. The ACC is trying to say that Florida State, or the state of Florida, has no jurisdiction on some of what is going on. There's so many different angles to this lawsuit between FSU, the ACC, and what is next. Matt Baker today, if you watch his timeline, there is a Leon County judge formally says he has denied the ACC's motion to dismiss FSU's lawsuit on personal jurisdiction. I am there on the conclusion that ACC has entered into a business venture with Florida State and Miami to engage in, for lack of a better term, a sports media business in Florida centered on FSU and Miami home games.
So for the Explain Like I'm Five crowd, of which I'm very much one of those, I saw a couple of comments that really make this as clear as day for everybody who's not following this, on a day-to-day basis, which is basically a bunch of people in Tallahassee and ACC country, I think, and then Realignment fans who are hoping like the next shoe drops and this all turns into a massive avalanche of other moves. But I still think we're kind of a little bit of ways from any of that. So basically today, the best way I saw it summed up was from a couple of different people like Charlie at Coxosaurus, all right? He said, FSU is like, let's do this in Florida court, and ACC's like, nah, we're from North Carolina, and the judge is like, nah, y'all do business in Florida. That's basically it, right? So the ACC didn't want the lawsuit in Florida. They want it, on more of their home territory. Florida State's like, no, we want this in Florida, home field, and yeah, y'all do business here, so it should be in Florida. No, it shouldn't. And the judge says, no, y'all do business in Florida. The lawsuit's going to be in Florida. So that's going to continue on in Florida as far as the jurisdiction goes. So FSU was able to show that, yes, they do business in the state of Florida and that is therefore the proper jurisdiction. And the ACC was looking to dismiss this case because it wasn't, the proper jurisdiction, whatnot. And so they've been denied that request. And so all that means, as best I can tell, is a win for FSU, and I guess byproduct Clemson and whoever maybe you want to lump into that. Not a huge win by any means. Nothing substantial that I think like erupts from that today, but it is a win nonetheless, and small wins maybe eventually add up to a big win, but I think we're still a ways away from that, at least the way things appear right now. That could always, change, of course, but that's just sort of reading the tea leaves. So, yeah, not what you wanted to hear if you're the ACC, not the end of the world either, though. So this thing will continue to trudge along for who knows how long. That's the question is who knows how much longer they keep going back and forth before maybe getting into a room and settling this and saying, hey, FSU, cut this fat check, we'll let you go. And then everybody else can fall in line and figure out their part of this. But we're not there yet. We're still at the wrangling over court, over jurisdiction, and trying to get those types of things decided.
Well, and it could change by the end of the day, or other things can be said by the end of the day. But that's a long, Brian Murphy, who covers the ACC, not a judge, not a lawyer, know nothing about Judge Cooper, might be the best dude ever, but can't imagine running a courtroom the way he has with delays and frequent breaks, off the top of his head monologues. I'm stressed out just watching him run the courtroom, which Matt Baker said, imagine living 4 hours away with a wife and kid wondering when daddy will be home. That's Matt, who's covering the trial. Yes, sir, Garrett?
Yeah, so while we're talking Florida State and Clemson here, before we go ahead, we have a question from CFB Plus where he's asking, random thought, and I don't think this is true for any second, if the Big 12 uses private equity, could they pay for Florida State and Clemson to come into the Big 12? We all know, from my perspective, if they leave, they're going to the Big Ten or the SEC because of the financial disparity, whereas right now the ACC is above the Big 12 in finances. What are y'all's take on this?
Yeah, I tend to believe that all of this battling to try and get out of their ACC deal is not to just eventually land in the Big 12. I just can't imagine that that's the case, and I can't imagine you would go to all these efforts and go the routes that you've explored, which is potentially going private equity to try and get out of your deal years ahead of time. I can't imagine all that is just to go to a conference that is arguably not even like eye to eye with the ACC. Now, I know Big 12 fans, I'm on your side, you know that, but just in terms like overall payout, like the ACC is like slightly ahead if you want to look at it. Now, granted, all that falls apart if they lose teams like Florida State and whatnot. I think they'd obviously add value to the Big 12, but would they add so much value and would that make sense to then have such an investment from private equity that they're still able to all pay that back and make the money they would be making by just going to the going to the SEC or the Big 10? I hope that makes sense, what I'm saying there. I don't know. That sounds like a much more uncertain proposition, CFB Plus, than just doing what it seems like they're trying to do right now, which is go that direct route to a conference where, yes, they're going to probably have to pay a big buyout. But if you're going private equity anyways, why not just do that and go where you ultimately want to go, where you're insured of a sure thing paycheck every single year that's not going anywhere and will never go anywhere for the Big 10 or the SEC versus the various gambles that you would still have joining a conference like the Big 12, because then who's to say like Kansas still doesn't, leave at some point in time. And then I think that if you added a Florida State and a Clemson, you're on the sturdiest ground you've been in since the conference was formed originally, like before Nebraska left and before, all that started. But there's still a lot of borrowing of money and whatnot. And it seems like that would be a more indirect path with a few more stops and potholes and things like that versus just going straight to where you want to be and where you'll be secure. I think the Big 12's got to kick tires on any idea possible, but I just don't think that makes sense for a Florida State to go that route.
Why would they then get all of this money, if they do, and then give it to somebody else?
Great question.
That's as simple as from a non-legal brain of mine. Why would you get all of that money and then not keep it yourself? Does it make your conference better if you were to add a couple of teams? Sure. Especially if you get the right 2 to 4 teams. Sure.
Right. That's the thing with the realignment stuff in the Big 12 is I totally understand it and it's entertaining and whatnot, but at some point of like we just saw the payoffs this past year, and I know that those are expected to go up and everything like that, but look, Florida State would add value to the Big 12. I just don't know if it would be to the extent of the value they would get from, going to the SEC or to the Big 10, and if the Big 12 would add enough to where, it's just, I don't know. I don't think the money adds up the right way for the Noles in that scenario.
I'm of the opinion, and I know you have felt this way, and I think even though we understand the value and how it pushes the needle or moves the needle when it comes to realignment, there is so much more to be done with this ACC, FSU, Clemson, whatever lawsuit, North Carolina. It's interesting because it could affect college football, but you could drive yourself crazy talking about this every day, and we actually, in some cases, do.
Well, I mean, it'd be kind of hypocritical to say that when we were talking about the Pac-12 all last summer. Now, granted, there was an urgency to that there's not necessarily with this. I know Florida State fans feel urgent. I know, fans of schools like North Carolina and whatnot probably feel the urgency. But this does have more of this is a legal process that's drawing out potentially for a long time. But I think the hope is that, at some point there's enough smarts on both sides, and this is the hope, obviously, that you go get in a room, you settle this, and you cut a check, and you decide, okay, Florida State, you owe us this. Florida State goes to their private equity people, cut us $500 million.
Where are they going? Are they going to go to the Big 12?
The SEC or the Big 10?
That's what I'm saying. But when it comes to the Big 12, as far as what they're going to do, as far as what they might do with the other two conferences, yes. But the Big 12 would be the last decision or option on their mind.
Right. Yeah.
That's what the question was about. The private equity, would it allow them
to
go?
I'm not asking the question. I'm going off what you just said of why the talk about it and all. I'm saying because the hope is that if you're a Florida State fan, this doesn't happen a year from now. It happens next week. And that's why I think they're hanging on every word. And for everybody else that has a dog in the fight, they're basically hoping that this creates the ACC falling apart, which I'm not sold on that either, and that turns into the Big 12 adding teams. I think that's pretty simple. They want to see Louisville. They want to see, in a far-off dream, Miami joins the Big 12. I don't necessarily feel like that's happening anytime soon, but that's the hope of some people, or North Carolina State. So there's people that just like realignment, and there's people that want the Big 12 to expand and be a certified, surefire, number 3 conference, which they would be if it were to all fall a certain way. The problem, I think, is that when it's like on the daily, it's not moving that fast. And it's kind of like you can talk the same thing 1,000 times. And so maybe that's where you're coming from. I don't know. But that's where the interest is
the difference
what it could
between
affect.
where the Pac-12 was at this time last year to the ACC is the Pac-12 dam broke. It was broken. Water was coming loose. The ACC still has a dam that's intact, even though there's like little possibilities of water getting loose. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I'm telling you that there's people that don't necessarily feel that way, and so their hope is, and there's a lot of just noise.
Understand the
for
hope.
sure.
I understand the hope.
There's a lot of noise. Well, hope is what carries Twitter. Hope is what carries the entire conversation. That's why it never ends. It's because there's hope that your school is going to get into this league, or there's hope that this league falls apart. And so I'm not saying it's based in reality all the time. A lot of times it's absolutely not. A lot of times it's just nonsense in some cases, depending on where it's coming from. But there is reason to watch this and go, this is going to have massive effects. Now, does it need a daily breakdown? No. But if it were to get settled this week, then what are we talking about? We're talking about the Big 12 all of a sudden being on the hunt for some schools. And so that's why
What did today's decision by the judge do to change anybody's mind of what's happening with the ACC and Florida State? It's just one more legal win, right? Does it really lead to anything?
No, not necessarily, but I'm just, I don't know. I think it's notable for those people following along with it, and it's a story that's going on, so it's worth mentioning.
Well, no, I think you and I are talking about two different topics.
I guess so.
Florida State today may have won something in the court, right? But it doesn't change anything when it comes to, like, they're leaving the ACC. There's a lot more. My point was, you can drive yourself crazy if you look at every legal decision with Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, whoever in the ACC. To me, it's different than where we were at last summer when the Pac-12 was literally, they were falling apart. Now, if that gets to that point where the ACC's fine, the thing about the Big 12 is he's using, will the private equity money, will some of that be used to bring Florida State and whoever else to the Big 12? My comment is no. I don't think that's what they would use it for, because I don't think that's ever going to be an option for them to use it for.
I think we're talking about two different things, because you're still answering CFB Plus's question, and I'm just answering in general why people are talking about it. I'm not still trying to answer his or her question. I already answered it. I already said that, I think that wouldn't make any sense for Florida State to do, or North Carolina for that matter, because I don't care how many times we hear, well, they don't officially have invites. I feel like once they get the free and clear, they would have invites. I'm with you. I'm not trying to go down this pathway of like talking about this every single day, because I don't think there's enough to talk about every single day in regards to this. I think this could also drag on in courts for quite some time, but you're talking about this particular question. I'm talking in general. Why are people talking about it? Because there could be multiple schools affected. Now, I think that gets overplayed to play on emotions of people and to, give them some false hope in some cases of this is the biggest news. And it's like, it was just a filing was sent in, and that's not a major game changer. It's not the countdown to Armageddon or anything like that. There's a lot of that nonsense, but, to each their own. If you want to be that invested into it, then by all means. I don't care for the dirty details of every little filing, but I do think this was just worth mentioning in passing, which was all I was trying to do. So a minor win for Florida State today.
All right, so there's that. And speaking of the ACC, SMU, of course, joining the ACC. In fact, on July 1st, they're going to have a big celebration. They announced today a record-breaking fundraising year. Heading to the ACC, they raised $159 million in the athletics department. And on July 1st, it's a Monday, I think, when they do join, and there's other conferences and teams that are getting together to celebrate. When they do, I'm sure we'll get the AD Hart on the show to talk about that day up in Dallas area. But $159, as those who have money, even more reason to open the wallets because of what's next for them, which is the ACC, after years of kind of wilderness.
$159. You said $159. $159 million.
I let that graphic, I guess.
Yeah, no, this was funny. So to answer your question from just moments ago, why does it matter to people? They just joined a conference that's possibly falling apart. So that's why it could matter.
Well, they're not worried about it because they just raised $159 million. They're not worried about it, but don't think in their meetings they're not watching what the hell's happening with the lawsuits. That's
exactly
sure.
right. That's what I'm saying. Is like, yeah, so they're celebrating right now, but don't think for a second there's not an SMU fan, as braggadocious as they may want to be, on Twitter or something about their new home, that's not sitting there going, wait, what if this were to happen? Where would that lead us? And so that, see, what happens is you go, what if, and then you go all the way down the pathway, so all of a sudden you've created like a brand new conference from scratch, and that's like too far down the road for us to get on this radio show, and too much fantasy booking for basically what's going on right now, because we try to stick to mostly reality. But when you ask of why does it matter, because there's an SMU fan somewhere out there who's maybe really into it, and they start to see this ACC stuff, and whatever happens with this Florida State court case, however long it may take, could have a direct effect on that school, and whether they are Power 5 for like a couple of years or whether they are basically back where they started in a slightly better conference. And so that's why it matters.
No, it would be a crushing blow to have all that. And the next thing you know, that conference is falling apart. By the way, from Dundee's, I hope the Big 12 doesn't get into the business of adding teams just to add them. Not every addition meets added value. They're not going to add another program, another university, another college, or anything to the mix that doesn't bring in revenue that's above and beyond what they're getting now. They've already had teams that were a part of the original 8 when Texas and Oklahoma story came down that have had to take a little bit of a haircut. They did that to build a little bit of what they have as a reservoir of schools and colleges or whatever, programs, 2 different additions of 4. They're not adding anybody else. And if they do, I will lose my you-know-what. And I think so would you, and so would anyone else who's a part of the Big 12 Conference. Enough of adding teams just to have a different number without everybody getting more money in return, starting and effective from this day forward.
Well, after seeing the latest payouts, there's some that would argue they shouldn't have added some of the schools they did add. I know there's some anti-Cincinnati folks out there. I know there's some anti-Houston folks out there. I'm sure there's some anti-BYU and UCF perhaps as well. I haven't seen as much of those, but I've seen some of the others. And, again, why does the ACC thing matter? Because people who look at the future of the Big 12, like are at SMU or like Florida State fans or whatever, you go, okay, what does this mean for us? And I think there's too much put on the Big 12's position here, because the Big 12 has nothing to do with anything right now. They have nothing to do with the court. They have no influence. They have no say. They could rattle the cage of the Pac-12, and they did. They did, over and over and over again. And in some cases, they didn't even need to. The Pac rattled its own cage and then blamed it on the Big 12. But that's not necessary here. And that's why I don't think you've heard a lot of like the kind of vague statements coming from Barrett Yormark. And when he's talked about business, we've tried to say, and we're correct in doing so, that he's not talking about just simply realignment. But I think because the Big 12's on this kick the last few years, and I think the idea of we were basically dead, and now not only are we 4, but we could be 3. And we could be the strongest non-SEC, non-Big Ten. Now, I'm not that tribalist. Like, I'm not sitting here going, like, with my Big 12 cap on, like, we got to be number 3. I want the league to continue to succeed. But at some point when you're changing the name and you're changing this, like, yeah, when does it suddenly become something different than it was? And I think if you keep adding teams, how many original teams are there compared to new teams? Is it really the Big 12?
No. That's
because
why I don't even think whatever they name that conference, don't use a number. Don't use 16. Don't use 12. You mentioned why it could be 18 by next year. Just name it a whatever. But there are 8 schools left. Not even 8 from the original Big 12. Take out TCU, who's among the 8 that survived. So I guess
take
you
out
would
West
say
Virginia.
Take out West Virginia. So it would be 6.
Yeah, 6 of the 10 are from the original Big 12.
Yep.
So at what point
6
are you
of the
even
16.
the Big 12?
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of new fans that are Big 12 fans because they've joined the conference in the last few years. So, yeah, I think that when you have the argument about the name and whether it matters or not, it doesn't. And for some, the Big 12 is not something that resonates well. So I think that's kind of the conclusion I came to at the end of last week is, call it the All-State 12. Or originally I thought you should include Big 12 in there because you fought all these battles to presumably be on the other side of a war. And why then shed your name? But at this stage, if you're just, of the mindset of, do whatever you have to survive and to be number 3, then, yeah, what is a name? And then certainly the more you add teams that weren't even a part of the league originally, really, what is that name? It's just a name. So I'm one of those that I'm not trying to see the 20-team conference. I don't have interest in that. I want to see teams play each other regularly. I want to see real rivalries developed. I want to see regionalism matter. I know you can't have all those things at all times, but I think the more and more you spread out, it sounds fun, like you're conquering new territory. It's like, now we're here, but like I'm not making money off TV dollars and whatnot. Now, it's interesting, the TV dollars, because that trickles down to the schools and their recruiting and everything else and popularity and all of that, and it allows you to grow if they are good numbers, but yeah, I think that's one of those where now it almost feels like for some people like a conquest thing, more than does it actually make sense. Yeah, sure, we'd lose like maybe $2 million per school, but we got the North Carolina mark. Like that's the kind of stuff that I don't jive with either. I think there's definitely opportunity to grow and to make sense in how you grow, particularly with some ACC teams that could become available eventually, but that time is not right now. And it doesn't seem to be anytime real soon. But you do have to be just on the lookout if you're Brett Yormark. And at the same time, where are we going? Maybe it is to where there's 3 30-team conferences. I think that would suck. But maybe that's eventually what it's going to, or 3 24-team conferences, and that's the new FBS or something. Maybe that's the case. I still think that would suck, but maybe that's what it is. And in that case, you'd want to be the all-state whatever, right? But beyond that, I don't love the idea of like, yeah, let's add another 4. Hell, let's bring in 6. Let's get the whole, it sounds fun for TV programming, and it sounds fun for maybe creating some new storylines. But in terms of like a product that's easy to digest, I think it would just be a little bit too much.
Oh, no. I mean,
we're complaining about a power ranking of 16 teams. Now we want to go 20, 22,
Garrett,
24.
Would you then, if all of it, this is hypothetical, which can be dangerous because then somebody takes this segment and they say, hey,
right.
365
no, we
sports.
Don't do that.
We don't. But it's hypothetical.
Right.
If, in fact, the North Carolina schools became available, but you did not grow any financial value, do you add them to your conference?
I mean, at this point, no. It's all about finance. It's all about generating more revenue to catch up with the SEC and the Big Ten. So if I'm adding somebody, they better add revenue, or it's pointless.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I don't even know what that would do to the contract. You get Charlotte, I get that, but it just
I can't imagine
you
that,
go on and on and on with those scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, and some people do that, and for them, go for it. But, yeah, I think if nobody's adding money, then at this point, if you're the other schools, you're going, all right, how many teams are we adding before we actually make money? We've added a bunch of schools, and we're making less money. And I understand there's down-the-road plays. Like, I'm sure an argument would be like, well, you got the Charlotte. Like, that's where I kind of zone out, to be perfectly honest with you, to each their own. But that's where I'm just kind of like, that's just too into the weeds for me. But I get it. All right, maybe the long-term play, it's like Big 12 Mexico of like, you won't see the results now, but in a few years you would. Now, maybe the scenario you say it's a brand new state, that probably would add some ways. Now, would it add substantially, or would it be like $500,000 for every school? I don't know. But,
it does bring in a chunk of millions, then why?
Right,
yeah. Eventually.
Because eventually you think it's maybe the long-term play, or you just see like eventually this is all going to turn into like 30-team leagues, and then maybe that's worthwhile. But I don't think that North Carolina is a gettable brand for them right now. I wouldn't imagine so. NC State, on the other hand, yeah, but I'm with you. I don't like the whole idea of adding to add.
No, yeah. I mean, just eventually, please make more revenue. And, of course, Brett Yormark's trying to do that in whatever ways he's doing that. One quick note, and then we come back with Mike Scarborough. He covers LSU. His thoughts about Les Miles and suing LSU for some of the vacated wins that might cost him a chance to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. A&M winning last night. This is a stat. This is from Gabe Bach. He works for Texags. It's the second time in 3 years that they have now reached the College World Series Final Four. Prior to Jim Schlossnagle, who was at TCU and did a great job with them, the Aggies had 2 wins total in their history at the College World Series in Omaha. And it's the second time in 3 years they've gone 2-0 at least started or gotten into the Final Four in the College Baseball World Series. More on all of that with Craig and Off the Radar at 4:45. They got a hell of a combination of pitching and hitting.
Yeah, they're really good. They're dealing with some injuries as well, but they do seem kind of like a team of destiny. I still hope that those two fans, regardless of whatever the rumors are or the story is behind Florida's coach, I still think that was just classless. I think that was totally out of pocket, and I think those two are just real scummy for those actions. But that's not the whole A&M fan base. For the rest of the fan base that actually knows how to handle their liquor, I think that they're on a hell of a ride right now, and it could very well end up with a championship in Omaha the way things are shaping up. So that would be a really big deal, as we talked about last week, for an athletic department in A&M that's won some things here and there, but, never won, the football title in modern day, and never won basketball, and so out the men's basketball. So they've had like women's basketball and things like that. But I think to win baseball would be.
They won it 1 year with Dale. No, I'm sorry, they did not. I'm attempting. All of a sudden, I looked at your LSU hat and got completely confused. You're talking A&M. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so they would. Baseball's not a big money maker, obviously, but I still think of it as a top four sport in college, and still one of the premier sports. And so I think to go win a College World Series title would be a massive deal for that athletic department and really kind of change the feel. So, yeah, that would be huge, and they're well on their way right now.
They are. All right, when we come back, Mike Scarborough from Tiger Bait, his thoughts. What was the reaction in Baton Rouge about Les Miles and his complaint lawsuit about losing games that he won at LSU? Also, a pretty good run right now for LSU when it comes to recruiting. And who are they and what are their expectations? Because it does seem to me that with Texas and Georgia and Alabama and even Missouri or Oklahoma, that they're kind of under the radar. That and more. Oh, by the way, later on today, Robert Allen on Oklahoma State and Sam Laughlin. He's a part of a private equity, executive chief operating officer for Paceline Equity Partners. He's going to join us to try to answer questions we have and maybe you have on private equity. That and more. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas. Dr. Steve Childress sent me a text on Sunday wishing me happy Father's Day, and I did the same thing for him. He's a great dentist. He has helped me get my dental work in shape, literally, and helped me understand why you have to stay ahead of the curve. Because if you wait and then you get nervous, you don't want to go to the dentist because you're going to get a shot or something pulled or a root canal. All you do is delay things and make whatever you have as a problem even worse. And I did that for probably 10 or 20 years, maybe twice during that chunk of time. Stonewood Dental with Dr. Steve Childress with great techs and specialists. Also other dentists that are working there within the company from the time you get your appointment set to the time you show up to the time you're in the chair and done with whatever it is, even if it's teeth cleaning to something more structural. Dr. Steve Childress and Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Rowe. approach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors. Baylor Athletics Trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
All right, so yesterday one of the stories was former LSU, Oklahoma State, Kansas head coach Les Miles. The NCAA agreement with LSU vacated some wins he had in Baton Rouge, and he's suing LSU because it might keep him out of the College Football Hall of Fame. Mike Scarborough, great person to have when it comes to LSU. Anything from TigerBait.com joins us on 365 Sports. What was the reaction down in Baton Rouge and LSU country when that story popped? Yeah, well, it popped, but when that story came out yesterday.
A lot of laughter. You know, it's one of those deals where you don't really have to be an attorney to realize that lawsuit isn't going to go very far. And then we had one of our guys, it's the unofficial official attorney of Tiger Bait, break it down, and he really has no standing. And honestly, I don't believe it's actually Les himself that's provoking this. I'm not sure. What his capacities are the last few years. I think it's more his family trying to solidify his legacy. The bottom line is, had he not taken the Kansas job and lost a lot of football games, he wouldn't have the winning percentage that he has now. He would be in the Hall of Fame. It's the losses at Kansas that did him in. And so, LSU's athletic department and their attorneys negotiating with the NCAA when they got in trouble over Vidal Alexander and Our Lady of the Lake and all that stuff that went down years ago. And you also had the men's basketball program under the microscope. Well, they basically, gave themselves some self penalties and then made some deals and that has nothing to do with Les Miles. So, to say that LSU officials said that they would see I don't know what led them to believe that, but I told someone yesterday, I said, this would be the equivalent of in 2020, LSU self-imposing sanctions on themselves by forgoing a postseason bowl game. And then that'd be the equivalent of the Texas Bowl suing LSU because the team they took didn't bring a big enough crowd, and had they had LSU, that they would have made more money on their bowl game. That's not how it works.
It's a great analogy. Thank you, Mike, for using that one. Craig?
Mike, what is the general consensus if you were to talk to, average LSU fan about Les Miles? How do folks down there feel about him at this point?
Look, it depends on who they are. Look, you got a whole lot of people that still hold him as a beloved figure in LSU athletics history. Whereas I think the majority of your hardcore football people probably feel that he overstayed his welcome by 5 to 7 years. And, there was a lot of posts yesterday, and we were having some fun, saying that we ought to sue him for pain and suffering for, the last handful of years of awful offense that he subjected us to, despite having Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and Fournette and everybody else.
Yeah, I can understand that. I remember those frustrations watching LSU's offense to be like, how is it possible to not be this or not be better when you have some of these freakazoids that they had at that point?
Who was more frustrating to watch, Iowa's offense or LSU's offense with Les Miles?
Iowa.
Ooh, that's close. That's close. But now the shoe's on the other foot. It's been LSU's defense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Mike, is there hope that that's going to change this season? As LSU, it seems like they're kind of, just going about their business with Brian Kelly. I don't feel like I'm seeing them in the headlines all that often necessarily. It seems like a lot of the talk in the SEC is revolving around DeBoer or Georgia or the new schools. Where does LSU kind of fall in line with things you feel like? And is the defense going to be one of those things that can bring about a resurgence on that side of the ball?
You're absolutely right. LSU's kind of in that next tier down. They're not getting a whole lot of ink. I think probably when the preseason top 25s get revealed by everybody else, she's probably going to be somewhere between, 11 and 15. But the schedule is real favorable. They just got to, win that opener in Las Vegas against USC. They've got another primetime Sunday night Labor Day weekend opener, and that's going to be a big one. And LSU and USC are real similar, losing Heisman Trophy quarterbacks, both with putrid defenses and trying to get things on the right track. But if you look at LSU's schedule, it really does set up for them. But the defensive line is still, in my mind, probably the worst I've seen at LSU in the last 30 years. And so I know you got new coaches, Bo Davis, obviously from Texas. Peoples is a renowned ends coach. Can they put it all together with some of the transfers and make a go of it and come up with unique ways to disguise what their limitations are? We'll see. But, I think I told a media guy last week, I said, if this was an LSU team playing an SEC schedule or playing 10 years ago, I think this team's probably 8-4 or 7-5. But when you look around, when you look at the schedule and you look at the issues that a lot of the teams have because of the parity and the transfer portal, it's kind of like, man, who are they going to lose to? Right now, Vegas only has them as an underdog in one game, and that's at A&M. So, while I think most years in the last 20 years they'd be an 8-4 team, I'm wondering if they can actually get to 9-3 or 10-2. But the defensive line and corner is still a big issue, and that's what they're trying to get fixed in recruiting. And you just can't go where you have so many years in a row with new defensive line coaches and new defensive coordinators every year.
Garrett, do you have a question for Mike?
Yeah, Mike, I'm curious where LSU is at right now with DeCorian Moore. I know they were really high on him. Texas got into the mix right now. He was on campus this weekend. Where are the Tigers at right now with him? And how much of an emphasis is the Texas push with the Longhorns because they're actually in the SEC now?
Yeah, I think that benefits Texas. LSU obviously wants him. It used to be when a kid was committed to you for so long, decommitted, you were no longer a factor with him. The fact that he came back to LSU and visited a couple of weekends ago, I think is pretty notable. But this is absolutely an NIL deal, and we're going to see where it plays out. I talked to a Texas source. There was a defensive tackle in the portal a couple of months ago that LSU and Texas were both after, and he ended up at Oklahoma. And both LSU and Texas walked away because the money got too crazy. So most people would obviously say Texas has more money to spend collectively in NIL dollars. But I also don't think that they get crazy with it. But I will say this. The kid is a fantastic prospect. I think his 5-star rating is absolutely justified. But at the same time, having covered recruiting and LSU's history with wide receivers, I don't think a wide receiver is going to break LSU's football program.
Yeah, no, probably not. Of all the positions, yeah, that'd be the one you feel pretty good about. Does Baton Rouge have a Lamborghini dealership? That's the big question to getting into the battles with Texas potentially.
Now, is that true that those were actually rented it for $500 a piece to park there?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah,
I don't know.
I was told they were rented. I was told that all those they rented those for $500 a pop to have them parked there.
Well, I know when Bijan got his, I think it was a lease. So, that's the only thing I've ever really heard about it, though. I don't know about when they're displaying them, on campus and whatnot.
Well, look, I go to practice. I park in the lot. I see what the vehicles are. These guys, obviously, good for them. They've got a lot of disposable income. They get all their meals paid for. They've got housing if they want it, but a lot of them have gotten to the point now where they're buying homes in upscale neighborhoods in Baton Rouge, and good for them.
Yeah, it's a totally different era for sure. It's definitely the player era and probably long overdue. So, Mike, I guess what would you say is the biggest question still looming for LSU as we're here in these summer months? I mean, defensively, you mentioned that, but replacing your quarterback. I mean, how do you kind of view all of that? What's just sort of still out there that's mysterious in any way for LSU football?
I think LSU's offense is going to be still very salty. They're going to be hard to stop. I think it's going to be tailored a little bit different. They're going to want to establish the run. I think they want to have a much better time of possession to give the defense. They don't want the defense on the field much at all. The biggest issue is going to be that defensive front, and can they get any pressure off the edge while you're still trying to find two capable corners that can lock down. Corey Raymond's back in town, and there's a lot of fanfare with that. But just like in recent years, cornerback is still a question, although I think they've got a lot of young talent there and returning talent that they can make a go of it. But the interior defensive line is just, like I said, that is the weak link on the football team. They've got some bodies there. They can't afford any injuries for certain. But again, you go to Las Vegas, if you can win that opener, I think probably the best on LSU's schedule is Ole Miss, and you get them at home.
Is there any chance Lincoln Riley can still try and get out of this game in the next 2 months?
Yeah. I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, LSU fans, as soon as that thing was announced, the bookings for Vegas happened immediately 2 or 3 years ago. Vegas is going to be something that opening weekend.
Mike, I have a question. Last week, the Paul Maneri news going to South Carolina kind of came out of nowhere from my perspective. Boots on the ground right there in Baton Rouge. Was that something y'all saw coming? And how much of this move kind of goes forward with LSU not LSU baseball, but SEC baseball in general, as the money keeps growing for the SEC. They're right now the premier conference in baseball, but they're going to have an extra influx of cash to throw across that league. How much of this move was financial, and what that kind of is going to look like going forward in the SEC for Paul Maneri?
I think Maneri has been lurking around the stadium. He's been, he talked to Miami real hot and heavy last year. I think he's been antsy. He's told everybody that will listen that he wasn't ready to retire, and he missed the game, and he's bored. He's played more golf than he wanted to. I just think he was ready to get back into baseball. And, look, he can say that, he had a neck issue and all that. He was basically given the opportunity to retire. LSU was ready to make a change and brought Jay Johnson in, and of course won a national title in year 2. So I think the only thing that caught me off guard was I wasn't sure that anybody in a program like South Carolina would go for a guy his age when you've got a lot of great mid-major coaches out there that have a lot of baseball games. I told my South Carolina game, I said, I don't know if it's about right, but it sure seems to me this is equivalent of y'all hiring Lou Holtz in football a couple of decades ago.
Oh my goodness, that's not a compliment then with Paul Maneri as far as or Lou Holtz. We have Grayson Grunehafer, who covers Baylor recruiting, asked me to ask you about Destrehan wide receiver Philip Wright. I know Michigan, LSU have been on him, but apparently he might be taking a visit to Baylor. Do you know much about him?
Yeah, he's a really good prospect, and he's kind of kept his cards close to the vest. He's going to be very interesting to follow as to where he's going to end up.
All right. Anything else? Yes, for Mike. Mike, thank you very much. We appreciate it. That schedule for LSU in football was nasty. It really. How did they get USC and UCLA in the same year? Is that right?
Yeah. Well, they had a home and home. Obviously, with UCLA,
right?
When Orgeron said the sissy blue remark, and of course lost that opener. If LSU loses this opener, that'll be 5 straight. So 5 straight opening losses. So they've got a breakthrough on that. But yeah, it is kind of odd to have both of them. But I actually think the schedule is very, very favorable when you look at who they've got and. You look at when Florida lands, will Napier even be the coach at that point? Auburn has question marks. Ole Miss, you get them at home. Alabama, you get at home. You got to go to College Station. And then in the season, with is going to be might be the marquee game, home game for LSU fans with Oklahoma. And so I think, look, all the SEC schedules, when everybody was complaining about should the SEC go to 9 games or 8? When the 8 schedules came out and everybody looked at them, everybody said, that's actually not bad. They did a darn good job of moving that around. But maybe people's opinions will change in year 2 or 3 of the league, depending on who rotates in on who. But I think most LSU people think that this schedule is actually very favorable, and I do too. Again, I think if they beat USC and they can get some semblance of a defensive line, they can be a much better team than I think they'd be in most years just because of the schedule.
The Oklahoma game, that's not a time. I had somebody in the chat, Paxton, asked, that time won't be known probably till what, maybe a week or 2 before?
Yeah, I suspect that is going to be an evening game. They did something a week ago that I've never seen before where they actually gave a projected time slot of the remaining games on the schedule. Which is, we've never seen that before. And it's kind of nice for people who are, planning, individual game trips and so forth. But as of right now, it looks like LSU's only morning game is at Williams-Brice in late September against South Carolina.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Great to hear from you. Have a great summer. Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com. We started out talking Les Miles, who sued LSU for some vacated wins, got into recruiting and much more. We have Robert Allen, Oklahoma State sideline reporter, is next. But I look at that schedule. Just think of the names. The names. That doesn't mean they're up or down, but the names. USC, UCLA, Ole Miss, A&M, Alabama, and Oklahoma. That's pretty damn good.
It's pretty stout.
That's pretty good. Now, if LSU can get a couple of things fixed, who knows? But losing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, some great receivers, they just probably restock there. But that's still pretty salty to have that kind of schedule with those specific names on the schedule. When we come back, Robert Allen on Oklahoma State. That is next, and this is 365 Sports. Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com, raised Wagyu beef. just outside of Tyler in White House, Texas, joins us. What do you have coming up on June 22nd?
So on June 22nd, we are going to have our next auction. This one will be completely online. It'll open June 22nd and close June 24th. This one, we're going to do Wagyu and Angus. So steak, New York strips, ribeyes, fillets, tri-tip, brisket. It's all going to be packed into this auction. All smaller lots, like we did in our April auction, and free shipping on everything that's purchased in this auction.
You mentioned you have a company now that's helping with this. Is that just something that makes it more efficient and just kind of ties everything into one spot?
Yes, so that's the more exciting thing. So we have this new platform that we are a partner with, and it's called Bid on Beef. Everything is going to be online on Bid on Beef. You can just go to bidonbeef.com. You can go to texasbeefhouse.com. It'll link you to that auction platform, and it's going to make everything so much easier to run through it.
The link that says Bid on Beef, and just looking at someone seasoning the steaks, the Wagyu steaks, and then the grill, the burgers, oh, my Lord. Someone did a hell of a job right there, Samantha.
Yeah, we are so excited because this platform is not only going to help our ranch, but help all of the producers in the lower 48 states get their product out to the public. We're just excited that we're bringing more back to the ranchers and the producers.
It's June 22nd. Bid on Beef. Go to texasbeefhouse.com. An image that comes straight up at you. Stake your claim on the finest cuts in the country from American ranchers and texasbeefhouse.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Robert Allen, sideline analyst, Oklahoma State, joins us on 365 Sports. Paul Catalina is off all throughout the week, enjoying vacation. Craig Smoke, David Smoke, Garrett Ross, and Emery Winter also inside the studio and mothership here today off of, MLK in Waco. Robert, thanks for your time. So we all went and released our preseason Big 12 preseason rankings, and we seem to kind of have there's 3 tiers. One that might have 3 or 4 teams at the top, another one that might have 8, and then maybe 4 that all seem to be, at least we don't know enough about, or they're just not going to be very good. Oklahoma State seems to be in that top tier. It just depends on where someone wants to put them. How would you view the conference yourself and the way you look at that?
Well, I made mine public too. In fact, I'm trying to pull it up, but I think I know it by memory. Yeah, mine was very similar. In fact, what I do when I do this is I go in and I pick every game with every team, making sure that I don't accidentally give 2 teams wins in the same game. So, I mean, I've got to balance it out because I want to see. You don't have to. This is just for the Big 12 media day. I mean, I could just scribble down 16 names, but to me, it's a lot more fun to try and be exact. And then at the end of the year, you either look at it and say, well, I don't know. I really don't know much. Or, you can kind of, like Ari Temkin on Sirius XM. He was the only one picked Oklahoma State at the top last year. They didn't finish there, but they finished in the championship game. So I gave Ari some credit. Ari knows more than maybe I think he knows. But David, I had 4 teams tied at the end of the exercise. I had 4 teams tied for first. I got the Big 12 tiebreakers out, which that's not fun. And I broke the ties. So Joni and her staff, the Big 12, won't have to send mine back and say, we don't take ties. I broke them, but I had 4 at the top, Utah alone in 5th, and then I had 5 more tied for 7th. So yeah, it's an exercise of suspense, because I think there's going to be a whole lot of there'll be a whole lot of ties when it's all said and done. I think it's going to be a jigsaw puzzle.
Robert, when it comes to Oklahoma State and trying to decide where to put them, there's the logic of they bring a lot of guys back, a lot of guys. The staff's intact, all that. So, hey, you did this last year. Why couldn't you just run it back and basically do it again? But we know it's not really that simple. There's the thought going against that of, well, if they don't have as much luck in close games, then, you're looking at losses versus wins. Defensively, I know there's question marks. And just following up on what they did last year, but in your opinion, why would Oklahoma State not be able to be as good as they were last year? What would it boil down to for you, outside of obviously wild cards like injuries?
Well, that's the first thing, if they don't stay healthy. The other one would be if they can't throw the ball well enough to allow defenses not to gang up on Ollie Gordon. Alan Bowman's got to be better, and he knows it. And he took steps in the offseason to make sure he would be better. And his whole goal is this year to stay ahead of the chain so that defenses can't gang up on Ollie Gordon. You mentioned the defense. They took steps over on that side of the ball too. They've got 2 of the most dynamic defenders back this year with Nick Martin, who I think is way underrated. If you go last year and stack Nick Martin up with Danny, I'm trying to think the OU linebacker. I think he was
Stutzman. Yeah,
Stutzman. I love Danny Stutzman, but I wouldn't trade Nick Martin for Danny Stutzman. And then here's the other thing: the secondary last year was confused. They allowed the Iowa State game was a debacle. There were 3 touchdown passes where there were busted coverages. It happened in some of the other games. This year they've simplified things. They're trying to so the secondary doesn't have to think as much. They can just play freely. The other thing is Mike Gundy brought in Paul Randolph, and I can see, in spring practice, Randolph makes a difference. He's made a huge difference in recruiting, but he makes a difference coaching on the field. This guy's a veteran coach. And you let one of your own go. Greg Richmond was a former player at Oklahoma State. That had to be very painful. But Paul Randolph makes that defensive line better, and that defensive line will be more multiple. Toward the end of the year, they started playing more 4-man. After going wholesale with the Iowa State, John Haycock, 3-man front. Now they're going to mix it up. And so you hope any combination or all of those things will allow the defense to play better because, their numbers weren't great. And then on the offensive side where I mentioned Alan Bowman, I'll tell you what he did. He went to Rob Glass, the strength coach, and said, I don't want to do quarterback workouts anymore. I want to do what the rest of the team does. So he and the other quarterbacks, one of them, Zane Flores, was already doing those workouts, but they all got into it. Bowman lost about somewhere between 5 and 10 pounds, got a little more muscle on his frame. Mike Gundy kidded around in spring, said, he was a little soft when he got here, but he looks better now. And his goal is to scramble and slide instead of throwing balls 20 rows up in the seats. He wants to try and get a few yards. And like he said, his words, keep the team offensively ahead of the chain. The other thing is he did a deep dive last year into the tape, every mistake he made, every interception, every bad read, and really tried to major on getting better. So I thought he was better in the spring, and we'll see what he looks like in the fall.
When you mentioned Bowman lost a little weight, is it me, or does he have a flak jacket on that makes him sometimes look a little bit more puffy than he is?
Well, he has a flak jacket. They all wear the flak jacket, but no, he was a little heavy last year, heavier than what he played at Texas Tech. I think when you go up north and you're at Michigan and the quarterback doesn't run that much at Michigan, that you probably – and, again, I don't think Michigan's off-season workouts – in fact, Bowman would agree with me, their off-season workouts aren't quite what they do at Oklahoma State. So he bought in totally to the body by glass system, and you can see it. I mean, I saw him during spring, but I tell you where it really showed up. He played in the charity golf tournament that I was involved in, 3-4 weeks ago. And out there in golf shorts and a golf shirt, I'm like, whoa, yeah, he looks like he could go with those flat tummies on the PGA Tour. So, yeah, and like Mike Gundy kidded about, Bowman was a little, I don't want to say flabby or anything like that, but he didn't look like he did in Lubbock when he played at Tech. He's now back to looking more like what he looked like when he came out of Grapevine High School.
Robert, where could Ollie Gordon improve, and how much of a battle? I think we talked to you about this months ago when he decided that he was going to stay. Yeah, mental. I think that was probably where my head was as well with him, just kind of the, barking on the sidelines, things like that. But that, I guess, answers part of the question. But how much of a battle did they have to put up to keep him around? Not that Ollie didn't want to be there, but just what were they having to fend off, I guess, this offseason when it came to making sure he was still in black and orange?
Yeah, not as many as you might think. I can tell you one school. I'm just gonna be honest. Just don't send this show down to Florida. Miami. I wouldn't root for Miami if they were playing the Kremlin. That's the most tampering, cheating institution out there in the NIL era. I mean, Nick Martin, they hammered Nick Martin more than they hammered Ollie Gordon. Nick Martin finally, y'all quit calling me. And so that's where some of it came from. I don't know if there were, I don't know any other I can name by school, but no, Ollie Gordon got hit on. Nick Martin got hit on a lot more. And they just, they did a good job. Their NIL is not flush with cash. I'm pretty sure they're not the biggest NIL in the Big 12. They certainly don't have the kind of money, the war chest I'm hearing about in the SEC. But with the culture here, the fact that they make the payments on time, that always helps when you get your check on time. The players are very happy, and this was a great spring. I think we talked about it, last time I was on with you guys. I can't remember a spring practice that I thought was better in performance and better in attitude than what they were this spring. So, they get hit on, and there's people trying to get some of these guys, but for some reason, they're hanging in Stillwater.
Robert, you do know that we just happen to be live, and anywhere in the world they can watch this show, even Florida, right?
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Okay.
But you know what? If somebody wants to contest me, what's the truth in a libel, or what's the proof in a libel case, David? Isn't it truth?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a few witnesses I can put on a stand if somebody in Miami wants to sue me for saying they're a bunch of tampering crazies. Then, go ahead. We're going to have to pay some airline tickets for some kids to take the stand, but they'll take the oath and they'll tell the truth.
So Ollie Gordon is the star. Who is his backup? I thought I saw something come down about the backup may be hurt. That was going to be their backup.
AJ Green, who transferred from Arkansas and is a Tulsa Union guy originally, he got hurt in the spring. It's an injury that's probably going to keep him out for the season. And, Ceci Valier, who was the true freshman running back last year, and he's very close to being a Jalen Warren type clone. In fact, coached by the same coach in high school as Jalen Warren, and Jalen's kind of his role model or mentor. Ceci had a very good spring, but I like what Mike Gundy and Todd Bradford and the staff did in the portal. They got Trent Howland from Indiana, and he rushed for 400 and change, but he was the leading rusher for Indiana. They just didn't have a very good running attack last year. But he's 6'4", or not 6'4", he's 6'2", 240. So he's a different kind of back. He gives you, in Oklahoma State historically, and I can't believe I'm saying this to this crew, Oklahoma State historically has had a problem with short yardage and score zone situations. Man,
I got you.
Of all the interviews to bring this up, I nailed that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of preaching to the crowd. But they brought in a guy in Howland that's 6'2", 240 that'll help in the short yardage and the goal line stuff. He didn't get here until the summer. I saw him the other day working out, and he's 6'2", every bit of 240, originally out of Joliet West High School in Illinois, and they feel pretty good about him. So what they ended up getting was maybe not a pure backup, but a guy that can take the heat off Ollie. And, last year Ollie had to be the guy in all those situations. And he probably took more hits and had more energy and wear and tear on his legs in those situations. So now you've got a guy, and I talked to Howland and asked him, I said, is that what you understand? He goes, oh, yeah, that's where I can really help this team out is in short yardage and goal line, and I'm looking forward to it. So I think they got a good fit there, and then I think Ceci will help out a lot in other situations. And then they've got some young backs. Rodney Fields is a true freshman from Del City that is, he's pretty mature physically, and he's very fast. And then they brought in a kid that I don't know much about from South Carolina, late pickup in the recruiting class, and he's a 6'2", 225 guy. So another big back that might be able to learn and use Trent Howland as an example to get his college career going.
Robert, before we let you go, the last day or two we've been asking Big 12-related folks about the stuff that was floating out there last week in regards to the conference, which maybe it was just being floated for reaction. I don't think that was necessarily the full deal. I think there's some actual weight behind the name change of the conference, the private equity. And I will fully admit I don't know jack basically about private equity. I just know kind of what I hear. It does make me feel good about that. The name change of the conference, the All-State Conference, the All-State 12, whatever, I can understand where they're coming from there. But do you have any particular opinions on one or both of those topics and just kind of what Brett Yormark's trying to finagle right now for the Big 12?
Yeah, guys, I'm a purist, but I've come around. The NBA basketball team here in Oklahoma City, the Thunder, wears Love's convenience store patches on their jerseys. I got no problems with patches. I got no problems with logos on the turf at Boone Pickens Stadium or any other Big 12 stadium. The name of the conference, it's been wrong for years. So, what the heck? I mean, it doesn't bother me. The only one I'm endeared to, actually two, because I grew up in Texas. I'm endeared to the Southwest Conference, and I'm endeared to the Big 8. Anything after that, it doesn't matter to me. So shoot, if you want to call it, the All-State, the State Farm, I don't care. If it puts money, and see, that's the other thing. I'm looking at this financially. You guys have seen it, the difference in the TV contract.
Yeah.
The difference in the CFP payments. That really, and I understand the SEC has had more teams win the CFP, and Greg Sankey feels his teams, his conference should get more money from the CFP. But boy, when I saw the disparity there, that's the first time I think I really got kind of, PO'd.
Mm-hmm.
So Brett Yormark, that's what you brought him in for. I mean, when he got hired, I know that Dr. Strum, the president of Oklahoma State, and Mike Gundy and Chad Weiberg, they all had the comment, this guy will do the unconventional. He gets it. He understands how to monetize the Big 12 more, and we're going to need to do that. This is what he's doing. He's trying to monetize the Big 12, and I'm all for it.
Garrett, do we have a picture when he was talking about short yardage situations? We have.
You got one of those.
Yeah, we have one that's over Craig's right shoulder on a shelf that happens to be the pylon, the ball, and two bodies in the air. So when you brought that up and you chuckled, I think we all went, "Oh my God, I can't believe you went there." But I get it. It's a short yardage situation. Man, we appreciate it. Do you want to give us at least the 4 schools that you had tied for first based on that?
Yeah, I don't mind. I'll run down as much as I can remember it. I told you Utah was 5th. And how about this? The tie was determined by the last game of the season. Utah plays at UCF. I think it's the Black Friday game that goes along with Oklahoma State at Colorado. I've got UCF winning that game over Utah. It's in Orlando, and as you guys might imagine from Oklahoma State's trip down there last year, to me that place is that's a haunting type stadium to go play in. But it's Oklahoma State, Kansas State, UCF, and West Virginia.
Okay. Here's the thing: people can sit there and but really, we don't know. Utah at 5 is about as low as I would go, but is Cam Rising going to be healthy? And there's some games that they have to play that are on the road. I like it. And immediately people are going, "Oh my God!" The fact that you were honest, you did one thing I didn't do. You picked every single game, so that way you can't say, "Well, 13 teams are going to be bowl eligible." Well, you can't if you play everybody. I mean, people are going to lose. So good for you on that.
And Smokey. Here's the other thing on that. This is one of those weird seasons where you get 2 byes. Well, the byes are going to help determine some of those games. For instance, a game that becomes very scary for Oklahoma State, they open with Utah at home, this is Big 12, Utah at home, then they go to Manhattan, and then the next week they get West Virginia at Boone Pickens, but West Virginia has their first bye prior to that game. So Neil Brown's going to have 2 weeks to get ready for Oklahoma State while the Cowboys are having the fun of going to Manhattan and playing Chris Kleiman's team.
Oh, yeah.
Those byes make a difference. If you get guys healthy and extra time to work on somebody that maybe they're better than you, but if you get an extra week to work on them, that can kind of even the odds a little bit. So that's why I look at it. Where's the game played? When's your bye? Who did each of the teams play the week before? Because some games take more out of you than others. So,
Robert, thank you, man. Appreciate your time. Good stuff. A couple of people said I like Robert's honesty. Good guest. We've had you on many different times before. You say it how you feel it. That's all that we ever could ask. And thanks for your time, buddy. We appreciate it.
Hey guys, thanks.
Thank you. So Dakota Tubbs, Utah, doesn't even need Cam Rising to be best in the conference. Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe that whatsoever. I don't know if that's a troll attempt or not. I think that they do. I mean, they beat Baylor without Cam Rising last year, but that was a 3-9 team. So I don't know that they're going to go and do that against West Virginia, Oklahoma State, so on and so forth. I think there's a little bit of both sides not giving the other side enough credit. And I think we're going to see that probably play out during the season. I had Utah at 1 on mine. I think most people have them 1 or 2. That's the lowest I've heard is having them 5. I'd be shocked with Brent Keithy coming back and with Rising coming back and just the stability that they have there, returning production. I mean, even what they have at wide receiver, I think that they've got the full array, and their defense is going to be, on paper, top 10 type of defense. So I think the schedule's favorable enough for them. They and K-State both, I think, got good draws. But, beyond that, I mean, you don't know what happens. You don't know what game all of a sudden there's a thunderstorm and, there's a delay. And we don't know how that's going to go. But on paper, they should be really, really good. I don't think they're just going to trample over everybody, but they should be really good.
Thank you, Robert. Good stuff, Craig. Garrett Ross and also Emery Winter. Emery's dialing up 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 tonight on the local CW. Onvi Ford is Kim Coulter's 95-year-old father-in-law. His birthday, military veteran, worked on the Rockets in Los Alamos. He said he's on no meds and runs around like he's 75 and a big Tennessee Volunteer fan. So, Onvi, thank you very much, Kim, for sharing that. If you ever want to do that for somebody that's a family member, you know how to get a hold of us on 365 Sports. The text line is 254-339-1122. Coming up next, Tim Sullivan on the Louisville story on their athletic department, cutting back what they need, not what they want. And, hey, since we brought it up earlier with the ACC, we haven't talked in a while about what does Louisville think about all that's going on, or they just sit back waiting, watching what is going on with the future of the ACC. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, located on Loop 340, Highway 6, just a little bit east of I-35 in Waco. They opened their doors in 1943, and they are rolling. They're doing so well that they built their brand new facility back at the end of 2022. It's now about a year and a half old. It is bigger, better, faster, and stronger, and they had been really good. Despite their original building that expanded a little bit that they opened up in 1943. Think about all of what is different now and a lot of the construction, pipe, steel, and metal that they themselves have. If you need pipe, steel, and metal, you need it delivered to you, or you want to go pick it up and you have a pickup truck or an 18-wheeler, a hauler, they now have more bays and efficient service for you when you buy their product that a lot of people have for not just since 1943, but generations of people within the families around Central Texas. Location in both Bryan and Waco. Pioneer Steel and Pipe since 1943, pioneerboys.com.
Make this the summer of Jeep at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get a 2024 Jeep Compass under $30,000 or save $13,000 on a Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland. Visit Allen Samuels in Waco today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com. At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
When
When your business depends on technology to stay on track, you need professional IT services you can trust. Carry On Solutions offers managed IT services, network professional consulting services, and cybersecurity. Carry On Solutions expert team handles M365 and Azure migrations, Active Directory assessments, security assessments and hardening, Exchange migrations, Windows Server upgrades, Veeam backup and recovery solutions, and more. In a world where technology is constantly evolving and security is an ever-ending concern, Carry On Solutions will keep your business running by minimizing risk, downtime, and giving you peace of mind. For more information, email sales@carryonsolutions.com or contact carryonsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
No, Paul, he's on vacation back on Monday. David Smoke, Craig Smoke, and this is 365 Sports. And I mentioned earlier today in the start of the show that Louisville and the AD was discussing about what you need, not what you want, which can be a luxury item or something that just is maybe a perk or two. And the story that was written by Tim Sullivan, who covers that area for Louisville, he joins us on 365 Sports. Tim, thank you very much for your time. So where is Louisville when it comes to their athletic department budget compared to revenue? Are they in the red, or are they kind of right there on treading water on the top?
Well, if you look at their financial statement from fiscal year 2023, I think they had $142 million in revenue and $140 million in expenses. They've had a number of severance payments over the last few years that have really tied their hands and cut into their endowment funds. So it's a pretty closely run department at this point, and I think that anticipating the changes that are coming with the settlement of the House versus NCAA suit and the Alston payments that are going to have to be made, they've recognized that they're going to have to do some belt tightening, and I think we've already started to see it. The sports information director left for LSU, and he's not going to be replaced. So I think this is a new reality that probably a lot of schools are facing at this point.
So no SID, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, I think they're going to, they have a lot of people in that department.
Right.
They're just going to redistribute the workload. I mean, he was primarily the basketball guy. And I don't know how they're going to fill that. They have a number of people with various responsibilities, but it may be a luxury now to have a dedicated guy for baseball and other non-revenue sports. So we'll see how that works out.
Tim, I don't know how much the example that I always go to, and I found other people always go to this, the real excess of college sports of like, we can't pay the players, but here's this new colored waterfall at Alabama that's crimson that the players walk by. Like, that's when it was just like, all right, you guys have no legs to stand on as far as the money goes. And now we've seen how that's getting redistributed. To your point, did Louisville really deal in excess that much? And like you said, this is just more of like, hey, this is the reality, and we don't have in our position currently the extra money. So facilities, maybe one more person in the SID office. Now, hey, everybody, we got to rewire our brains. This is all going to paying players now at this point.
Yeah, well, I think that for most schools, this is going to be the new reality. Alabama, Prince Bunny, Ohio State, Texas, places like that, they're going to continue to go over the top, to attract athletes. But that the reality is that with the ban lifted on paying athletes, your ability to spend directly on them is going to be a lot more important than waterfalls in the training room or miniature golf courses like they have at Clemson, or some of the kind of absurd luxuries that we've seen in a lot of places. I mean, I think there's been a tremendous amount of waste in the name of trying to impress recruits, but that's been the arms race that we've been looking at. And, if you don't do these things, you're going to fall behind, and I think that's reality. But I think it's good for college athletics in general that a little more bottom line business attitudes take hold, because the mammoth salaries paid to coaches, the money that's gone into ever grander facilities, to me, this doesn't seem consistent with what the college experience should.
Did you just knock him off? Yeah. Hold on just a second. That's a really good answer. I enjoyed listening to what he was saying with that. Hold on just a second. Tim Sullivan will join us again from Louisville, sports writer, sports reporter, who had the story about the AD, about changing athletic departments' need to make preparations for the upcoming NIL payments to athletes what you need, not what you want, which I think for a while in college athletics you could do the need and the want. Tim, I'm sorry we got cut off in just a second. You were kind of still going into what they were doing.
Well, I just think that what we're seeing is a reckoning that's long overdue, that colleges have spent, to a large extent, like the proverbial drunken sailor. Ramogi Huma, the executive director of the National College Players Association, says that college sports doesn't have a revenue problem; it has a spending problem, and I think that there's a lot of truth to that. Some places can afford all of this excess, but by and large, it's going to be very difficult for most places to budget another $20 million for player salaries.
So, Tim, when thinking about the money and moving forward, the ACC obviously has a lot of questions. I don't expect that you know what the end game is. None of us really do. The courts will decide that ultimately. But much like they're preparing themselves for paying players, I'd imagine they're also preparing multiple, side ramps for whatever the future looks like as far as their affiliation goes. What is the gist that you get as far as the feeling of Louisville and the ACC and the future, and just kind of what all's going on right there with Tallahassee and Clemson, and also North Carolina to a smaller extent?
Well, I spoke to Josh Hurd, the Louisville athletic director, about that specific thing, and I've read a lot of reports that indicate that the ACC is going to implode at any moment. That Florida State and Clemson are just the tip of the iceberg. That North Carolina and Virginia may well be looking to get out as well. And as long as you have this enormous disparity between what the Big Ten and the SEC generate and what the ACC and the Big 12 generate, I think this is going to be a constant source of discussion. And as the grant of rights that the ACC has negotiated with its members gets closer to expiration, or you get enough schools together that essentially the league will collapse, I think there's a real possibility of additional change. I've read that there's kind of an open invitation from the Big 12 to Louisville, and I've asked about that, and Josh Hurd told me that the only conversations he's had have been with the ACC, and I think he's a truthful guy. But if you look at the landscape, it's changing pretty rapidly, and I think you would be remiss in the role of an athletic director if you did not develop a contingency plan. If the league falls apart, where do you land? And that's been a recurring story here in Louisville for decades. And if you go back through all the conferences that they've been a member of, I don't know if I could even give you a complete list. It's probably at least 5 or 6 different leagues. But when they landed in the ACC, I thought, well, this is a home that you can expect to be in for decades. And here we are, looking at what could be the collapse of a long-standing and very prominent league, and one that's been very successful in many sports. Probably has won more championships in the last few years than any other league, but you still have the revenue difference with the Big Ten and the SEC, and until you can solve that or recognize that you're not going to solve that ever, I think all of these schools are still in play.
Tim, wasn't there a time back, I think maybe even 6 or 8 years ago, I lose track with all the realignment since the Nebraska, Colorado, or whoever left. Wasn't there a time when Louisville was in talks with the Big 12, but either the Big 12 was either playing mind games or it did not work out?
That's my understanding. I don't know that that's ever been addressed on the record in any detail, but I think when Louisville was casting about for safe harbor until Maryland left the ACC for the Big Ten, I think any number of possibilities would have been more attractive than the leagues that they were in. The ACC and the Big 12 at that time were pretty comparable, and of course, Big 12 loses Texas and Oklahoma. It's not the same deal, but it's very similar. I think if the ACC were to lose Clemson and Florida State, so I think everybody has to have one eye on the future and think, if the dice fall a certain way, where do I go? And, I don't think I could make a prediction at this point, but I think that the ACC right now is held together mainly by this grant of rights that I think runs through 2036. And as we get closer to that date, all bets are off.
Yeah, and whatever happens in the courtroom, although that seems to be a change of every other day. Last thing, Tim, and we appreciate your time on Louisville. It's a really good athletic department. I know that there's been disappointments or whatever, but with Jeff Brom, I know basketball has been a disaster at times, but they feel like maybe they're going to get that right. It's a really good athletic department, a hell of a university. But are they basically sitting on the outside looking in or on the sidelines as they watch what Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and what they do, and they just have to react accordingly when whatever happens?
I think that's largely true. Yeah, I think Louisville would like for the ACC to survive and flourish. And, again, if you look at the College World Series, half of the teams are from the ACC. So, I think competitively, this is a very strong league, but financially it's not. And that's kind of the bottom line for everybody at this point is, how do you generate enough money to remain competitive? And, I think it's going to be very difficult for a lot of leagues and a lot of schools to stay up with the Big Ten and the SEC. I think if you look at the enrollment and the alumni base for the Big Ten, with the addition of USC and UCLA, they're going to have something like 8 of the 10 largest schools in the country. I think it's hard to replicate that, in a smaller market. and that goes for a lot of schools in the ACC and the Big 12 as well. And it seems as if there are a lot of schools in what used to be Power 5 conferences and are now Power 2 plus 2 others that are kind of waiting for their turn in the pecking order.
Tim, good stuff. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We'll be in touch. Tim Sullivan covering Louisville, the AD, again, about wants, not need, what you need, not what you want, and then got into a lot of other when we come to the ACC and whatever that future is they kind of just sit out there. They're good. That's I wish the Big 12 would have had them 6 or 8 years ago.
Now you would have had teams.
No, 6 or 8 years ago.
No, that would have been probably the better choice in hindsight. I think that's one of those you wish you had back from the Bowlesby era. But, that didn't work out that time around. Doesn't mean it can't eventually happen, although it's not the Big 12 they'll be joining. It's whatever, the All-State and however many teams. And if it even gets to that point, that's the other thing. We might be sitting here 2 years from now. If that lawsuit, and that's the part where I see where you're coming from on some of the stuff as compared to the Packer. You're like, all right, they have to, before the season starts, get a TV deal done. Like, they have to do that. We knew that. This here, I know there's certain dates that are important as far as exits and things like that, but it is not as much of a pressure cooker. Even if you may feel that way if you're a Florida State fan, for example, it is not close to what the Pac was dealing with as far as like a ticking clock and the potential for the seams to burst if that, answer wasn't met, which it ultimately was, but not to the satisfaction of multiple parties and who had already all done their due diligence. Even though some claimed they weren't even speaking, they sure moved quickly when the time came. But yeah, that was a different game that they were playing. So I think, let's just say fast forward, whatever the time period is. It's 2025. It's 2036. I don't know. But whatever it is, I think you line up the list of schools and you're to poll Big 12 fans, even though it's a different demographic set than it was these past few years, because now it's, like we were saying earlier, it's more new Big 12 schools than there are regular Big 12 schools.
6 out of 16.
Yeah,
are
so
the originals.
The demographics are not what they once were, but I think if you polled most people, there's a scattering of votes that would go on, but I think Louisville will be near the top of the list of people going, what teams make the most sense, that bring something that would be good for various reasons. I think that Louisville is a team that makes an awful lot of sense for you, so I don't think that they would hurt to find a home, but obviously, as experienced as they are in conference shuffling, you don't want to leave the ACC when you just seemingly got there, it feels like.
They have a better group of alphas and logos than the Big 12 has.
Well, right now, not if the teams were to leave. That's the point.
But obviously, that could by the way, speaking of Florida State and the ACC, they beat our leading North Carolina, 9-5, bottom of the ninth. The winner goes on to play Tennessee.
Winner gets to leave the ACC.
And Florida State would win that game. Well, both of them would play as hard as they possibly can. They are now, but baseball in Omaha, Florida State 9, North Carolina 5, bottom of the ninth inning tonight. It's one of the elimination games, the other one going on tonight. And then, of course, A&M and Tennessee on the other end of all that, waiting to see who they will play to move forward and eventually in a best-of-3 championship series this weekend. When we come back, Craig Smoke off the radar. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that Central Texans and people beyond Central Texas have counted on for 25 years now. And during that time, they have proven time and time again that they are the people that you can count on for your automotive needs. And right now, they got their summer savings event ongoing, which means that they've got a lot of great deals that you can take advantage of right now over on the lot. And that includes a brand new 2024 GMC Yukon SLT for under $62K. You can enjoy years of comfortable summer travel, plenty of room in the GMC Yukon if you want to take the family on a cross-country trip, or here in the state of Texas, cross-state trips, practically a cross-country trip. But if you need some space, some room, all the bells and whistles, the latest technology, and just the maybe most important thing of all, the peace of mind of driving around the new vehicle, then check out the GMC Yukon SLT if you want to go heavy duty this summer. Again, more details over at Richard Carr, but that's just one of the new offerings that they have. They have the Cadillac Lyric, for example, and different days I'll get into different vehicles, but that's another vehicle you can check out right now. They also have the GMC trucks loaded on the lot with GMC trucks and more on the way as well. But that GMC Yukon SLT, one of the hot rides of summer, that can be yours and can be something that boosts your summer vacation experience or travel experience or just everyday driving experience. So looking to go new, there's some options for you. You're looking to go pre-owned, they've got you covered there as well with a lot full of 100 highly inspected used cars and trucks. And, of course, they got inventory online that you can check out, or you can come by and see it all in person. But they are a company where 100% credit approval is always the goal. So you're looking to buy pre-owned, look no further than Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, who's built a reputation as the people you can count on for 25 years in Central Texas when it comes to your automotive needs. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now. Go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni. Thank you.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is Craig Smokes Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, segment on Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 4:45 to take a look at just a grab bag of stories and try to stay away from college football for the most part, although sometimes it still finds its way based on the story, but not much in that way today. none of the topics covering college football, though we'll get back to that, I'm sure, pretty quickly. But tonight, Game 1 NBA Finals get underway, right? If I just say it enough times, that means it's going to become true at some point, right? That it hasn't started yet, and the Mavericks still have a chance? No?
No, it's over.
It is over, Johnny. 4-1 Celtics take care of business and defeat the Mavericks last night to close it on out and end the NBA season with a record-setting 18th championship for the Celtics franchise, as Jason Tatum had 31 points and 11 assists to help lead the way in game number 5. His counterpart, Jaylen Brown, had 21 points, 8 rebounds. Quite the dynamic duo, but they got players, I mean, Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis, and, the list goes on. But Jaylen Brown was named the Finals MVP, well-deserved there. And so Boston, with the 106-88 win at home, it almost made me feel like this was all set up, that Game 4 win by the Mavericks, as dominant as that was. It just kind of felt like, are the Celtics just waiting to go back home so they can have the real celebration? That crossed my mind. I don't think that you play around like that. I don't believe that whatsoever.
You never,
but
no matter the 3-0 lead in a series in the finals, which no one's ever come from behind to do that. I think teams have done it in other rounds. You don't do that. But the way they played on Friday night or whatever night it was, it did appear as if, hey, let's just go win this in front of the homies, and they did.
Yeah, they did, and they were the best team during the regular season, 64-18, and I don't think that they were, thinking that way, like I say, but it did cross my mind because they got beat so badly and then turned right around and dominate at home and take care of business. So maybe that was just a little push they needed to go ahead and finish this thing off. But regardless, the Boston Celtics are your NBA champions, and it's their first title since 2008. Which that seems kind of hard to believe.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe if you watch the NBA regularly, you just have it memorized of no, you've had the Warriors and you've had so-and-so, but I just felt like the Celtics had won some titles in the last, 15 years, but that was not the case. So they are back in the win column, and as a result, as I mentioned at the very start, they now have 18 championships, with 2024 joining 2 titles in the 50s, a bunch of titles in the 60s, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 66. So that was what? 1, 2, 3, 4,
9
5,
of 11,
6,
wasn't it?
7 in a row. They did not win in 67, then won again in 68 and 69.
67 was Wilt Chamberlain in Philadelphia.
Then they took a 5-year break and got back on the board in the 70s in 74 and 76. Then won again in 81, 84, and 86.
Bird and company, McHale, Parrish, etc.
And then no titles in the 90s.
86 was Walton was on that team. Go ahead.
Yeah, 86. And you talk about, the Bill Russell connection, having played for the Celtics. I saw him being brought up last night quite a bit. But
he was not only a great player, won 2 national titles in college at San Francisco, but he was a player coach with the Celtics. It wasn't. You hear about Arbach. Bill Russell was a head coach of them too.
Bill Walton, I was saying.
No, Bill Walton in '86. Yeah,
of his recent passing.
Yeah,
is what I was getting at.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bill Russell was a player coach.
He was probably the greatest team captain champion in all of pro sports.
So they had no titles in the 90s, but then won in 08 and then in 2024. So they've hit every decade but the 90s since the 1950s.
So think about this: the 2 most successful hockey. But the Yankees and Celtics are known, right? I mean, nobody in football has what New England has the most with 7 or whatever. But the Yankees haven't won since 09. The Celtics they have 28, 27, whatever. And the Celtics had not won since 08. That's a long stretch for the 2 most productive championship-type teams and franchises. That's 15 years in running, yeah.
Yeah, so they are one of the premier franchises in U.S. sports, and that passes them by the Lakers with that 18th championships. And so that is now theirs and theirs alone, much like the Patriots, as you mentioned. So that is an interesting list to look at because you have the Celtics now at 18, the Lakers at 17, and you look at all the title I ran down Boston's. I mean, L.A. fills in a lot of the blanks there. But do you have any idea who the third team is when it comes to NBA championships now?
Let me see. San Antonio?
No, they're 5th.
Okay, I was just throwing out. Milwaukee doesn't have. Nope, they have about 2 or 3. NBA. The Knicks? No, they have about 2 or 3.
Golden State?
Golden State has what, 4 or 5?
Golden State has 7.
Do they? Oh, that's right, because they won one back in the 1970 or something with Al Attles and Rick Barry.
They have titles in 47, 56, 75, and then the 4 that they've won during the Curry era. So Golden State has 7. So quite the drop off from the Lakers to the Warriors. Still, the Warriors, went from 3 to 7 in a 10-year period. So that's pretty impressive. The Bulls was 6, and the Spurs have 5, and those are your top 5. So then you get into 2s and 3s and all of that. But there's multiple teams there. So yeah, the Celtics, the most decorated team in NBA history now with that 18th championship. So the season is over, and we'll move on as Boston will look to run it back, and the Mavs, I don't know how you go look in the mirror and just kind of think about things a little bit, but they put on a hell of a show. It was a hell of a ride. I had a great time as a Mavericks fan. Never expected them to be in that position to begin with, and that playoff run was a lot of fun no matter how it ended, but it did end in disappointment.
How about this stat for Boston real quick, if you don't mind? Out of 101 games or so they played, how many games do you think they had a 20-point lead or more among 100 and 1, 2, or 3 games? Just what would you think off the top of your head? 20 points or more in a game.
Like in the 70s?
No.
No, I mean
this year they won by 20. They had a lead in amount of the games. How many of the 100 games did you think they had a lead of 20 points or more in a single game? That's a lot. It's a big lead, and do it over and over again. How many times out of 100?
50. I don't know.
It was like right at 50. They were up. They were a dominant team. They're not going to go down as like the Bulls with 69 or 72 wins, or the Golden State with 73. But, man, they were dominant, and Jason Tatum got that thing off his back.
Yeah, I mentioned at the start they had the best record in the NBA, so they were the favorites rolling in, and they were just more dominant to their credit than I thought they would be. I thought the Mavs would put up a little bit more of a fight, but they just didn't show up for the most part, and that's not saying that Boston didn't put it on them. Boston did, and then the Mavs also didn't show up, and that was a double whammy that had that series over in 5 games. So credit to the champs there. Meanwhile, some uniform news. Let's start off with the Ravens here, Garrett, as the Baltimore Ravens have now unveiled their alternate purple helmets. Those purple uniforms, the jersey and pants, are actually their color rush. So you feel like you've seen those before, you have, but the purple helmet is the new addition here, as it's their Purple Rising, not named after Cam, but their Purple Rising alternate helmet. The first time the team's worn a purple helmet, first time they've worn an alternate helmet during their franchise's history. So these are going to be paired up specifically with their color rush uniforms, as you see there. So it will be the all-purple duds. It looks very Washington Huskies. It's got that vibe to it, but it's a purple matte helmet, gold face mask, and you've got Ravens on the back part, and then that alternate logo, as you see there, on the side. So those were unveiled today, and of course I think I've gone over before how the NFL rules now allow you to have multiple uniform combinations. So when you watch the NFL this year, you're going to be like, you understand color rush, but you kind of those were like on a night by themselves. Let's say when they were first kind of being unveiled, it was like Thursday Night Football had the color rush uniforms a lot, but they've expanded their uniform offerings, and so these are the types of change-ups that you're going to see. So what are your thoughts on the Ravens purple helmets and how that rolls with the all-purple look here?
I like them. I like the helmets. They've normally been like a black or a darker. Yeah, I like them. It does look more like a college program, but it's a nice change-up. Good for them. They'll sell a bunch of that.
Garrett, I love them, man. I love the whole concept of them. I'm a big Edgar Allan Poe fan, so I got to go up there and see his grave in Baltimore a few years back. So anything Raven-related, I'm all for it. I'm a big purple guy, so I think this looks really clean, and I'm excited for more teams to come out with their uniforms like this.
Yeah, I'm not all for it's kind of like expansion. It's like, more is not always better. I think we see that with baseball's City Connect uniforms, that there are some atrocious-looking uniforms. Like, there's some cool ones. There are some ugly-ass baseball uniforms. But I think the NFL, the stuff we've seen for the most part, like Houston kind of got a little bit like out there, and I don't mean that negatively, but just changing up the status quo with their H-Town helmets.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that across the NFL. The NBA's been doing, their City Connect uniforms and all that for a while. So just going to be a different time in the NFL. And so you'll see the Ravens sporting these for what was specifically said to be, I believe, one game this year that they were planning on wearing those. So don't know if that's been unveiled exactly what game that will be, but apparently it'll be worn once. Meanwhile, speaking of purple uniforms, we kind of touched on this yesterday, but TCU unveiled their latest uniforms, and the crowd's gone mild, basically. They had a lot more to these uniforms. They have dumbed them down. They've made them far more basic than they were before, but there you see the main sets of mono white, mono purple, mono black. Of course, you can mix and match them, but these were all that were really shown. You will see there at the bottom, there's the purple helmet, but there's also that chrome silver helmet. So that will be something that they also can offer up and change the looks if they want to do that. And UniWatch does a really good job of breaking stuff like this down, and they just basically noted that, like, all the stuff that made them distinct, they've stripped away. Like the Black Panther, kind of a collar necklace that we talked about yesterday, that's all gone. The stuff on the shoulders, they were a different color, that's all gone. So, yeah, they've kind of gone back to a more basic look, even more basic than Baylor's that were getting panned.
Yeah. No, this did not get a great reaction.
No, it did not. And there's like the back on the knob of the helmet, it's got like Carter Boys, so that's like something kind of unique. But for the most part, these were made more plain. So, curious how that goes across, for TCU fans. But like you said, I think mostly it's been somewhat negative. But what do you guys have any particular thoughts now that you've seen them a little bit more?
I hate these. I think they're extremely plain. To me, this looks like something you would break out for practice or like some spring ball. There's no clarification or real design to it. It's just extremely plain. Like most of the time when you see the adjustments, you see it go like from this, like Baylor's. Like Baylor went from this to adding some substance to it.
Yeah.
I don't understand what they were going for with the reverse transaction of that. Like these are bad.
Yeah, they seemed very TCU, like TCU specifically. Yeah. And now they just look kind of like they could be SFA, and then you look at the purple uniform, for example.
The Kyle Visser right here nailed it. This is the purple Penn State.
The purple Penn State, hey, there you go. Now, I mentioned the knob. The knob's actually on the back of the jersey, I guess, not the back of the helmet, the Carter Boys, which is a cool, phrase that they use. But one thing that was pointed out by UniWatch when I was trying to just figure out, okay, what is different? And I don't know if there's anything to this or not. You look at West Virginia's unveiling, they have the Big 12 logo, but you look at Baylor's, there's no conference logo. You look at TCU's, there's no conference logo. We've heard about them rebranding, so that was a question that was posed by that site of, like, makes you wonder if there's not on there yet because they're going to change those up. So I guess that's something to be on the lookout for. But there you go with that. Meanwhile, a couple more notes. The UFL championship game went off without a hitch on Sunday, and the Birmingham Stallions are your champions for the third consecutive year, even though it's a new business, basically, the UFL and XFL coming together, but the Birmingham Stallions winning their third straight championship, shutting out the San Antonio Brahmas 25-0 up in St. Louis. And this game known for being a third straight spring football championship for the Birmingham Stallions, but also because Adrian Martinez was named the MVP of this game. So his success in the UFL continues on, as I think we mentioned maybe last week that he had won the regular season MVP award. But this also marked Tom Brady's first broadcast appearance. As
Didn't even know that.
Was up in the booth for a second, and along with Joel Klatt, and then also was actually the one who presented Adrian Martinez with the MVP award. So his Fox broadcasting duties are starting to get underway, and I would think almost like he's too big a star to be doing it. But then again, he's made for it, and I think he's actually going to be really good at it.
I didn't hear it. I just saw that they
I'm just not even talking about based on Saturday or Sunday. I'm talking about just in general.
He's got a smart ass in him, but also there's no way you could do what he did just because he has a great arm. You have to be cerebral, witty, very much studious, so he'll be ready for all the broadcasts like he would be getting ready for an opponent for a game with the Patriots or the Bucs.
Yeah, I think he's going to be pretty good. So, there you go. There's Tom Brady, part of that broadcast. And good for Adrian Martinez, as he has now added UFL champion, and the Birmingham Stallions win another spring title. So there's a few things off the radar.
All right. What are your thoughts? Florida State did win. That's a final now.
Yeah, I didn't have the final, so I didn't want to go there. And you had read off the schedules.
Yeah, if it's final 9-5, they'll play Tennessee, have to beat them twice. A&M awaits the game tonight.
We need Florida State versus A&M in the championship game just to check Paul's heart rate.
Paul,
even though he said FSU will be his pick.
Paul sent a very naughty text after the FSU check swing against, was it Tennessee?
It was Tennessee. They got screwed, man.
Yeah, and they did. They seemed like they did. But you know what? Then don't give up the next hit or the next hit or whatever. So, but Florida State advances to play Tennessee now, as they will now play. Tennessee gets one win, they're in. Florida State will have to beat them twice. And Texas A&M, as I mentioned, now they sit back and wait as they will find out who they get to play tomorrow. Now, when we come back, we have been discussing, and I've been wanting to make sure we had somebody that was involved in actual private equity. Sam Laughlin is involved in private equity. He's the chief executive officer for Paceline Equity Partners in Dallas. He went to UT. He also got, I think it was magna cum laude at Baylor. And he is involved in private equity. And questions we have for him, and maybe if you do in the chat too. He's next. This is 365 Sports.
Make this the summer of Dodge at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive away in a 2023 Dodge Charger or Challenger RT with $13,000 off MSRP, or the powerful Charger GT and save $10,000. Get a stunning 495 horsepower Scat Pack for an amazing $9,000 off MSRP. Plus, enjoy 90 days to make your first payment. That's 90 days with no payments. Hurry into Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing his time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
Paul Catalina out this week. He'll be back on Monday. David Smoke, Craig Smoke, 365 Sports. And we have heard and discussed some of whatever private equity might mean. The Big 12, of course, that came up last week as a conversation. Even Florida State has looked at the possibility of using private equity as they try to get themselves out of the ACC. So Sam Laughlin, Chief Executive Officer, Paceline Equity Partners in Dallas. He graduated from both Texas and also earned a degree at Baylor, joins us on 365 Sports. Sam, thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate you. What is the main goal of, and you're a part of it, you're the Chief Executive Officer, what is the main goal of a private equity?
One, thanks for having me on, evening. But bottom line, to make money for your investors. Private equity is kind of an elastic term. It covers a lot of different types of investments, but at the end of the day, they're all designed to return positive cash flow to their investors.
So, Sam, there's been some kind of I think it bogs down the conversation. It's like, hey, private equity, and I've seen folks quickly go, no, this is private investment. Is there a true separation? You just mentioned both terms there, but is what we're talking about in this case private investment, or is it private equity, or is it still the same thing for us, us dummies out there?
Well, again, yeah, private equity is what you would call a suitcase term. Credit fits into it, leverage buyouts fits into it. Lots of different types of investment strategies. The details around what the Big 12 is doing are pretty scant, but it looks like it's an equity investment, meaning the investor here, the private equity firm, would be buying a percentage of effectively the future cash flows of the conference.
It's a conference that doesn't have, it's making money. They have a really good TV deal, but nothing compared to the Big Ten and the SEC. And the ACC is about where the Big 12 is, give or take a little bit. If they get it's an infusion of money, but how does the Big 12 make enough money to pay that back?
Well, they've got to grow. The valuation details have been kind of all over the map, from $800 million to $1 billion, from 10% to 20%. But let's just do simple math. Private equity investor puts $1 billion into the conference, which can be distributed to those conference members, the schools, for which they're going to receive 10% of all future cash flows that come off of the league. Right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? I think I saw maybe $470 million is what was doled out to the schools. So if it's $1 billion for 10%, that's a 20-year payback, and private equity is not going to be interested in those type of returns. So either they're going to take more of the conference, more of the future cash flows, or they're banking on a tremendous amount of growth to generate the types of returns they need to hit.
Sam, when you first saw this story, and as you said, it's still scant on a lot of the details, but when you first saw this, it's not the first time we've heard private equity involved, and there's been the examples of, the NBA and pro sports and all that. But when you first heard this in the Big 12, what were just your initial thoughts as far as that type of a partnership, and would it make sense or not?
Complicated. That was the first word that came to my mind, because are you going to be aligned as a conference? The private equity owner is going to want as many members as possible, right? They're going to want to see growth. And they don't really care whether it's an equitable distribution amongst the schools. They just want their 10%, in our example, to grow. Whereas the conference may look at a college and say, this college doesn't deserve an equal share, or maybe shouldn't even be a member, or we need to swap them out for a bigger TV market. And you potentially have a lack of alignment. And then who your partner is day one, but they're ultimately going to want to sell their investment. I don't think they're going to, hold it in perpetuity, depending on what type of vehicle they're investing out of. Typically, they're thinking in 5 to 7 year terms. Who's going to be your buyer? What kind of restrictions or approval rights is the conference going to have? Can CDC sell it to the Chinese government or Trump media, or people that the board of directors don't necessarily want as partners? So it's a complicated deal because it's never been done, at least at the collegiate level, and making sure everybody's aligned to the outcomes. And Big 12 needs to be careful. These guys are going to be smart, and they're in it to make money. and they're only limited by their creativity. So they're gonna try to set this up as best they can for them to generate the highest returns possible. Hopefully that's mutually beneficial, but not necessarily.
So if whatever it ends up being, 800 million or $1 billion, whatever, 16 teams in the Big 12, are you saying that if in fact somebody was to be a partner with the Big 12 or whatever that term would be, would they then want decision making on if somebody's not carrying their weight and request they be moved out of the conference? Is that something that could be a part of the discussion?
It's definitely going to be part of the discussion. What rights they have as investors, what rights the conference has as far as their investment. Those investor rights will be heavily negotiated. For the minority interest that's being discussed, I wouldn't expect the private equity partner to have much control, except the ability to protect itself against certain actions. If we were talking about private equity coming in and buying 51% of the Big 12, well, then it's no longer really a college conference. It's a privately held company being run for profit. So, at these levels, I think the conference would still be in firm control, and all they're doing is, at $1 billion, they're accelerating 2 years of cash flow so they can distribute that out, but giving up, future 10% or 15 or 20% of future cash flows in perpetuity.
So, Sam, you said something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You said something earlier that just caught my attention as far as adding. So, do you think that a private equity, in order to ensure more of a chance of return on their investment, would want expansion, for example, of, hey, I know you talked about like having say on teams potentially and things like that, but in theory, would they want like, hey, we need 8 more schools because that's 8 more potential revenue streams that add to the pile to get us our money back? Or would it be more along the lines of like, let's stay status quo? Do you get what I'm saying there?
They're going to want the most revenue growth that they can get.
Yeah, just period.
Whether that's naming it the, all-state conference, licensing deals, they're going to want as much revenue period as they can get. Yeah, full stop. They want growth. And it's the only way it makes sense, because at these valuation levels, it's too slow a payback. They're gonna want to see more than $50 million coming in. They're gonna want to start to see $120 million and really drive that revenue. And the Big 12 has the ability to accelerate some cash flow, invest in their programs, and hopefully put themselves in a position for that growth outside of expansion, but putting quality product on the field so that TV channels will pay more money for it, right? With broadcast rights.
How do private equity firms make money, and where do the investors come from? How does that work?
Yeah, when you're talking private equity firms the size of those being discussed around this deal, it's primarily institutional investors, everything from sovereign wealth funds to pensions, to university endowments, to large family offices, but primarily all institutional investors. And a typical private equity setup, the investors make a commitment to that private equity firm that they will fund investments up to a certain amount for an investment period called 4 years or 5 years. And the private equity firm makes money off of what's called promote, or a general partner interest, basically a profits participation above some set return. Let's call it an 8%, above an 8% internal rate of return, or IRR. The private equity firm enjoys 20% of those profits. And that's, plus they have management fees, but at its core, the best alignment is they should be making money off of outsized returns that they're delivering for their investors.
So, Sam, this is, according to various, folks who've asked around, just very much something. I mean, your Mark's got a background in this, partnerships, things of that nature. So it makes sense where it's coming from. But, not everybody's like, all right, we're doing this and we're moving ahead. It's not officially done by any means. But I think you kind of, said this earlier. But do you think private equity is something that makes sense for college sports, an entity like the Big 12 in their positioning? Or do you think, like there is a lot of doomsday naysayers of like, oh my God, you welcome this in and it's all over college football as we knew it? Do you have any hard stance at all, either way on that topic?
I think college football as we knew it's already over.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
It's a business now with NIL money and the transfer portal. It's a business, and it's always been a business, but they at least tried to pretend it was about the student athletes.
Right.
Now it's about the money and it's about being competitive. So, attracting investors, you're going to look for the lowest cost of capital, whether that's a loan, whether that's selling equity. But if you're outside the Big Ten and the SEC, you're having to get creative to try to survive and be relevant.
If you don't mind me asking, do you recommend the Big 12 do this?
I would have to know a lot more about the details of the deal. I can see why the Big 12 is exploring it. The ability to improve their facilities, put a little more NIL money out there, get better players, better products, put themselves in a better position to stay competitive with these other two super conferences. I can see why they're exploring it, and I see the industrial logic of it. But you just really have to think through all the unintended consequences of it. It's just never been done, and you are a business now. The veneer's gone, and you've got a partner, and that partner wants a return on its capital, and that's just going to require a real full mental shift into running a business versus a university college athletics program.
Would the private equity that infuses that money into, let's say, the Big 12, do they get a say in where that money goes towards NIL or coaches being retained or facilities, things like that?
I think that's all going to be on the negotiating table. I'm sure they want to see that money utilized to grow revenue for the conference, right? So they don't want to see it going into places that are not going to generate a return on investment. At the same time, the universities are going to want as much flexibility as they can have with their money, and they're selling their interest. So I think that's going to be a heavily negotiated point. How this capital is going to be used to grow revenue for the conference.
As somebody that's in private equity, again, Paceline is what you do. You're the chief executive officer. You went to UT, you went to Baylor. You've seen what's happened in college football. Obviously, Texas has this massive budget and what they're doing. They've kind of separated, being a part of the SEC, and Baylor and the Big 12 are trying to play catch-up. What do you think when you hear that maybe from either the uneducated or people who just maybe don't know that private equity is a bad thing? I mean, that's what you do for a living. You're incredibly successful. So is your company. But are there people that just don't know enough about it, and so they feel like people are selling their soul?
Look, private equity is made up of thousands of funds, and there's good actors out there, and there's bad actors. There's good investors. There's some that don't last that long. Private equity typically uses leverage, which creates risk. But they're doing it to generate better returns on their capital. When they do it prudently, they generate spectacular returns. When they do it imprudently, it can cause a company to fail. And there's examples of both throughout private equity's history. I think it would be up to the Big 12 to structure this in such a way that doesn't create risk for the conference, and is simply a cash infusion. But if it gets structured as a preferred equity interest or a loan, they're injecting some risk into how well the conference will perform financially that doesn't exist today. But they're also looking at the world changing around them. They got to do something, right? I love Baylor, graduated in '94, undergrad there. Big 12's on borrowed time if it can't find a way to compete with the SEC and the Big Ten, right?
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. Right now, it looks like it's like a rocket fuel. The rockets take it off, and there's only 2 conferences attached to it. We'll figure out what happens with the ACC. So if they contacted you, and I don't know, maybe they have or other.
No, they haven't.
Okay, but if they contacted you, what would be a couple of questions you would ask them if they wanted you to help infuse the money into the Big 12?
Well, starting with the cash flows and understanding all the sources of revenue, understanding how often that revenue can be changed. So with the TV contracts, what is it, every 5 or 7 years, you're looking at how much growth can we get there, what naming rights, what are all the assets, and what are all the cash flows, and where can we predict that there is growth that's going to generate a solid return on our equity investment. After you get comfortable with the financial profile, it's then going to get into the negotiation of control rights and when can I sell my interest? Do I have a preferred return until I get my capital back? There's just a lot to negotiate, but it's going to begin with understanding the cash flows. How much cash is going to come off this league for how long, and at what rate can we expect it to grow?
Yeah, and would that be something that a private equity would want in a short-term, long-term type, I guess, lens that, okay, what can we get? How quickly can we get something back? But in the end, is it a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year? I wouldn't think they'd want to wait that long to get anything in return.
Yeah. It depends what the vehicle is. It depends what the return profile is for the vehicle. So, for our fund, we're typically underwriting 5 to 7 year hold periods. And so we'd want to be confident that we could monetize that investment during that hold period. This may be what's called an evergreen vehicle, and they look at it as a cash flow perpetual profile. And as long as it's a healthy yield on their equity, they may be able to put it in a vehicle that they could hold it forever or hold it for 20 years. So I think it just depends on the type of investor and what they've told their investors the type of investments they're going to make are. And again, it's all over the map.
Yeah.
You have all types.
Last thing, Sam, and again, first of all, thanks for your time, because if anything, wanted to kind of learn more about it. I did. I know that Craig did. I know that our audience did, and I think we have. As you've watched college sports, as somebody, as you mentioned, that loves Texas and Baylor, and you even said, listen, man, the veneer's off. What do you see? Is this sustainable, all of what we see going on?
Kind of moving into the philosophical here. If I want to watch professional sports, I think the NFL puts a better product on the field.
Amen.
If I want to root for student athletes, that's gone. So I'm kind of trying to decide, Baylor basketball will always have me.
Yep.
But I'm probably less enthusiastic about college sports in this environment than I was before it changed.
And that's one of the things that we've talked about as a group, that you wonder about how much of an attrition of the fan base might happen, even if the 25 or 30 alphas continue to grow and get better and have all these championship opportunities or whatever. You wonder about the attrition of college fans that might just get disinterested or like, no, I don't like that anymore. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but at least that's in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, just like proteins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Proteins are bad for a long time. There's fan attrition. College has always been able to keep their fans because there's a tie-in and nostalgia. It was an important part of all of our lives to be there. But when it becomes a business, that becomes less relevant. And it's really all about, is this a high quality product that I enjoy watching? Because it's just a business now.
Sam, thank you very much. Appreciate the knowledge. Sam Laughlin, Chief Executive Officer from Paceline Equity Partners in Dallas. I mentioned it's a very impressive resume when I read about him, and Ashley Hodge gave me Sam's name to try to track him down, and then after he spent the weekend working on trying to get any kind of the finest of details of what might be a part of it, not that it's written, to give us some answers as well from his perspective.
Yeah, and there's a lot that we don't know. Like, that's the thing, is just trying not to get too far ahead of ourselves here of, trying to get into details that he doesn't know, and I don't think the Big 12 even knows yet. It's something that was floated out there. I definitely think there's something to it. It wouldn't just appear out of thin air, and it's not like private equity hasn't been mentioned alongside Florida State, for example, in the last year. But, on the surface, there's good and bad. I think, like, when the story first was popped, you had differing opinions. I think he provided some good information and shed some light on it all. But, yeah, there's clearly still just a lot that we don't know about it. And so without the full picture of information, it's hard to come to a real full-blown opinion on it. But it definitely sounds like something that's worth continuing to explore, which is what Brett Yormark, I'm sure, and the presidents are doing. But I'd advise anybody who's actually involved in the decision-making to do their damn due diligence and to make sure they really know what they're signing up for or not signing up for, because, it could be the move that kills the conference, or it could be the move that propels them. But you better know what and you better know it backwards and forwards, because this isn't a light decision that you're making one way or the other. So they better consult with guys like him and have all their T's crossed and I's dotted before they move forward. Because you don't just willy-nilly do something like this and then expect there not to be some collateral damage of some sort. But I think it's worth kicking the tires on. I understand the poo-pooing on it from the SEC and Big Ten fans, but you're living in a different reality. If you want to be patted on the head and patted on the butt for that because the school you root for is making, $50 million more per year, that's great. But, don't knock the schools that are trying to just, like, you put them in not you, the fans, but those conferences in a roundabout way put others in this position to where it's not their decision or their fault if the Big 12 decides to compete or not to compete. But if they choose to compete, this was the world that was created around them as a result of some of the other moves that were made from those conferences. So, it makes sense for them to fight, but I don't knock them for trying to fight. I think that's what I see a lot of, and it's like, well, what else do you expect them to do? Like, just sit there and take it? Like, I don't think we admire them for that very much, and that's certainly not the Big 12's.
He said that.
It's certainly not the Big 12's history is to sit there and somewhat take it from Texas and Oklahoma, but you don't have to do that anymore. And I feel like at the end, Bob Bowlesby kind of recorrected them and maybe gave the conference a little bit of a new attitude of going out there and making something happen rather than being reactive. And so this is them going out there and looking to possibly make something happen, and rather than just being reactive and just taking whatever they get.
He basically said they really need to look at options. They're falling farther and farther behind. That's what Sam was mentioning. And a lot of you are reacting to the interview that you learned something, and hopefully you did. I did. And it's great to have Sam. We appreciate that. You can imagine he has plenty of fires, or I guess you could say things to do with what he does for a living. But he's interested. And he also made the comment about, as a fan, he's starting to kind of be turned off a little bit about, if he wants to watch something professionally, I'll want to watch the NFL because they do it the best.
Well, yeah, it's proven by the TV ratings and everything else. They are. And I used to be the college football's better guy, but in the last few years, and I'm not, I don't want to host an NFL show. I'd still much rather talk about college football, college sports, and all that. So by no means am I like backing away, but it's impossible to not see the way that maybe others would feel based on all the stuff that's happened. And yeah, probably no, we'll never watch the NFL. Like, the NFL is superior. I mean, it's just proven that it is, but especially when you add in all the extracurricular stuff, it's not even close. I mean, when you're comparing a salary cap to absolutely no rules whatsoever, contracts keeping guys in place so you can actually buy the jersey and know outside of a trade scenario that guy's going to be there for the long haul and be your quarterback versus, hey, this guy we were lucky to uncover had a great year. He's going to Ohio State now. And then we're back to I mean, that's not fun after a while. And so I think college fandom will be fine, but I think you'd be foolish to not think that they're going to probably shed some fans here and there. Maybe not entirely, but at least lower the interest a little bit because of just all the craziness of it.
Well, as good as college football is with a $20 million game, what is it? How much? 10, 20, 18 million watch a championship game? The NFL does that every week, every game. Their numbers are monstrous. And so
having said that, it's still the number 2 sport in America.
No, it is. So there's a reason for it. Yeah.
Nobody's the NFL, and that's why college football will be fine, but it's just a matter of how many fans do you feel like you're making versus are you turning off? And I don't think you're necessarily turning them off entirely, but you're dimming the lights on somebody like him, for example, who's not as interested as he was maybe even a few years ago.
And despite the changes, college football, as even CFB on the chat room said, is more popular now than ever before.
Right.
Will it maintain that if they go to this nuclear thing that is a part of whatever 20, 40 teams or whatever it might be?
And I'm sure the TV networks who feel like maybe the end goal is the 30, 40 team league feel like that is the new era and that will be where it increases. Perhaps that's the thought. I don't know, but there's a lot of unanswered questions in the game right now. That's what we do know for sure.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist. There's no top 5. Paul was out this week. John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, is next.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
.365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at UnitePrivateNetworks.com.
Hall of Fame columnist John McClain with us on Tuesdays. John, thank you very much for your time. We were just talking to Sam Laughlin, he's a part of a private equity firm, a chief executive officer with the Baylor in Texas, about the Big 12 looking at that option to infuse some money. At the end, I asked him about what would he do. He said, if I want to watch pro sports, I want to watch the NFL because they do it better than anybody. What do you say? What do the people around the NFL or people that cover the NFL or even those who are in the NFL say about how college football has become more and more pro football?
Well, it is, and you're a free agent after every season. To me, if you're going to get NIL money, make them sign a contract where they have to stay there 2 or 3 years instead of just move from school to school. Now, NFL players are all for college players getting paid. They wish they had that luxury of getting paid. But I don't know anybody that has said, I love the transfer portal, because every player has an alma mater, a team they play for. They don't like seeing good players leave for bigger money someplace else, and they don't like their team having to scramble to replace them. A lot of them, if you're not the big programs, you know you're going to get in trouble. There's a story, Houston Chronicle, Sunday, about U of H 1 year into the Big 12, and Kelvin Sampson and the AD just were going on and on about how far behind they are when it comes to NIL money. And then I see UT was the last week or the week before when they had recruits there, and the players entered a gauntlet of Lamborghinis on both sides. Now that is the kind of thing you want out all over the country, because you want players all over the country when they're thinking about college. Think about the University of Texas and those Lamborghinis. There's no way you get the attention of a young player more than a fancy car, unless it's just cash. And the IRS is going to get them at some point. You know, there's a lot of these kids can't afford to pay taxes on a Lamborghini. So I don't know if the alums or the schools are paying the taxes for them. But if not, Uncle Sam is coming, and it might not be a very pretty sight.
John, what did you think of the Trevor Lawrence contract? And I know Dallas fans weren't excited to see that exactly, but just what did you think of it from, for the Jags and just in general, kind of the waves that it sent in every other direction in the NFL?
Craig, I don't think Trevor Lawrence's contract had jack squat to do with what's going to happen to Dak Prescott. Dak's in an unprecedented situation. They can't tag him. They can't. He's got him by the footballs, and he either wants to stay there and they pay him $60 million a year, or he's going to be gone. I think Jerry Jones will pay him. Jerry doesn't want to start over. What is Jerry going to be? 82? He's not in the starting over age bracket. And Dak's been really good in the regular season, as every Cowboy fan knows. I've been in the Metroplex 2 of the last 3 weekends, and I was amazed that there's more talk about Dak's contract and CeeDee Lamb's contract, and even Micah Parsons, even though it's a year away, more so than it is about the running game, lack of a running game. Who's going to play what positions, Dan Quinn leaving, Mike Zimmer coming in. And if they don't get these extensions done by the start of the season, I would say, okay, you can ask questions one more time about the contracts and not Jerry, Mike McCarthy, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, or Micah Parsons is mentioning contract during the regular season, because it is distraction, and we don't need any more distractions than we already have. And I don't think they're giving up on Dak as much as a lot of fans would like them to do it. I think they're going to re-sign him, and then hope when they get in the playoffs next season that he won't be playoff Dak and McCarthy won't be playoff Mac.
That's an interesting observation, because I kind of had that conversation with Paul here recently about it. It just feels like all Cowboys fans talk about his contracts. So you've picked up on that as well. That is interesting. Now, so you said Lawrence has no bearing on Dak, and that's all good. But what did you think? Obviously Jacksonville's not going to walk away. But just where do you think about Trevor Lawrence, where he is in his career and the trajectory, Doug Peterson, seeing him with Jacksonville, and just kind of what they're looking at this point?
Well, first of all, you have to keep in mind, it's not how much the quarterback makes, it's how much he takes up percentage-wise of the team's cap. Because the cap has gone up so much, $55 million doesn't take up as much as, say, Aaron Rodgers' last contract. I saw a story about this, and the cap's going to go up and continue to go up astronomically because the owners are bringing in astronomical money, and it has to go up. So the Chiefs showed you can have a quarterback on a big contract and still win if you know how to handle your roster. Tyreek Hill gone. They've won 2 Super Bowls since he left. And so they do a really good job with the cap and personnel. And it can be managed. Now, Trevor Lawrence, is he worth $55 million? No. It's almost like whoever's next. Okay, is Tua Tagovailoa going to get 60? Is he going to do a shorter deal? Is that going to get 65? You know, in 2 years, will C.J. Stroud get 80? No telling what it'll be by then, but it just keeps going up. And I'm for players getting every penny they can because they get cut under contract all the time. You know, they get cut constantly. So the teams wouldn't do it if they couldn't afford it. And Trevor Lawrence has not been the generational quarterback he was projected to be when he was a freshman up through he was drafted first overall after his junior year. And maybe he will be this season, but so far he's been really good, sometimes good other times, but mediocre. And a lot of people say it's because he had that rookie year under Urban Meyer. Well, Urban Meyer's not throwing interceptions in his third season. That dog don't hunt. That was 2 years ago. He should be better. They haven't had a lot of stability around him. Now they're hoping they do, but he was certainly not worth $55 million to anybody for Jacksonville.
No, that's fair. And this is just kind of taking a look back, and this is definitely like, you know, just being older and looking back on it. But what do you think young John McClain fresh on the NFL beat would have thought if somebody were to come to him and say, hey, by 2025, NFL quarterbacks regularly are going to be making $55 million per season?
Well, nobody could have envisioned that because back then running backs made more than quarterbacks.
Man.
If you had said, well, the running backs, maybe they're the most important parts of the offense. Well, boy, that's taken off because right now the franchise tag for a running back is less than a tight end. It's only better than punters and kickers, and I guess snappers. But who would have thunk it even 10 years ago?
No, it's insane considering I don't remember the first ever overall salary cap for a team when free agency started back in the 90s. Do you? Like 10
started in 93. I don't remember what it was, and then when they started put the franchise tag out there, we didn't have any idea what it was or what the salary cap was. Some teams had a really bad time dealing with it. Floyd Reese had been linebacker coach and a assistant general manager, became the Oilers general manager in 93, and all of a sudden that hit him, and he was a football guy. He wasn't a numbers guy, and that's one reason they went from 12-4 to 2-14.
John, wide receiver fill-in-the-blank drama is a summertime tradition. I figure your answer is probably just going to be it's always about the money. With Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco, is it just all about the money at this point, and what do you make of that situation?
It's always about the money.
Yep.
Guys want to win. They want a ring, but they want to get paid. And when they see what other receivers make and then they see themselves, and they can squawk all they want. They can put things on social media. But if they want to, they can be guaranteed to keep an eye on you 3 more years. Last year of his contract, 2 years on the franchise tag, then they would let him go. And he's going to have to be, he's not going to get over $30 million. He's not going to get close to $30 million. I think he'd get somewhere $25 or $26 million. I'm just glad Nico Collins of the Texans was fine with 24. Now he already looks underpaid. And, but I think players, hey, in off season, it doesn't matter what they do.
Right.
They're not getting paid. They don't start to get their game checks till the week the regular season starts. And then not many guys stay out. Sometimes they do, but it costs them a lot of money.
Hey, John, what's going on? Go ahead, Craig. What's going on with Isaiah Buggs, Kansas City's defensive lineman? Seems like he is constantly in trouble.
It doesn't seem like there's a chief who gets in trouble like every other day. It's unbelievable the issues they've had off the field. Nobody blasts them for keeping these players and protecting them the way they used to. Kansas City fans are cool with it because they win Super Bowls, and everybody else would be too. He had the one cruelty to animals, which his agent or his attorney said was a kind of a conspiracy to get him because I can't remember what he has, a vape house or not a vape house or something he has that's legal in Birmingham, and they say they're doing everything to get rid of him. Now they've got another one, and then, of course, She Rice has still got all those charges against him. Then there's another player that's been in trouble, and I guarantee you, Andy Reid keeps his fingers and his toes crossed every day because he can't keep up with them for a month to either see what's the next call in the middle of the night he's going to get from one of his people saying so-and-so has just been arrested, and I guarantee you he's ready for camp again so they can keep him under their thumb. But the thing is, the Chiefs have been noted as starting with Tyreek Hill and taking guys with baggage. And when you take guys with baggage, not all of them, but the odds are you keep that philosophy, it's going to bite you in the butt and cause you a lot of embarrassment.
Yeah, after not this latest incident, but the one before, he had told people that basically the police were targeting his hookah lounge, and it was conspiracy.
That's it.
Yeah, and then I guess yesterday he posted, or I guess the business posted that they were surrendering their business license. So I don't know how all that plays together, but that is of interest there. Just last thing for you, John. Astros, I know Justin Verlander's going on the IL, but I don't think we talked to you. I think the Abreu move happened after we talked to you last, so obviously an unfortunate and unexpected ending there, just big picture-wise, but just your thoughts on Abreu and him being gone now, the Astros cutting ties, and just what they're looking at the moment.
Jose Abreu, their first baseman, was a disaster sign. They finally got rid of him. Jim Crane will have to pay him $30 million. He was a great guy, worked hard. He couldn't hit the fastballs anymore. Everything was to the opposite field. Now they still don't have a legitimate first baseman with some pop. I have never seen a team have so many pitchers go on the injured list. Kyle Tucker was eligible to come off a week ago, and he's still out. It's just amazing what they're doing. And the Mariners walloped the Rangers. Now the Rangers and Astros are tied for second. But after the All-Star break, maybe they'll make a run for a wild card berth, because you guys know look what happened to the Rangers last year. Look what has happened to the Astros. I guarantee you a lot of people, and maybe the fans of the two teams, are expecting that kind of run once the All-Star game is over.
I'll tell you this, it makes it a lot easier to swallow when you've won a World Series now, as a Rangers fan.
Yeah,
I can put up with disappointment.
Hey, I'll bet you, Craig, the first time you made straight A's, assuming you did, only time I did was first grade, and then my parents expected it every year and never got it. So I'm guessing the first time you did, your daddy expected you to do that every year.
Right.
So you win a World Series, everybody expects you to at least contend for the World Series the next year, and the Astros aren't and the Rangers aren't. But what happens after the All-Star break? We've seen so many times throughout history. Teams get hot and make a run for the playoffs.
Absolutely. I made him sleep outside in the summer heat in a sleeping bag if he came out with anything but an A.
So he's been sleeping outside in a sleeping bag ever since, huh?
Yeah, he has. John, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Hall of Fame columnist, voter, and more, John McClain, with us on Tuesdays in the 5 o'clock hour. No top five today, right, Garrett? So we're done.
No
Is that right? Thanks to Emery Winter. Emery is dialing up 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 tonight on the local CW. If you don't mind, please hit the like and subscribe button. Spread the word as we close in on 50,000 subscribers. Also, thanks to all of our phenomenal sponsors we have every day. Some you see behind us, and also those you hear throughout the show every single day.
Yeah, 50,000. Paul's doing a keg stand in here. So we started, when he said that, I don't know where we were, but we were not.
43?
Okay.
Yeah, 42?
And that was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like a month ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. So, yeah, we've closed in pretty quick. Let's get over the finish line and then start the march to me doing a show hatless, which will take a little while longer, but well worth the wait. So, yeah, I want to see Paul doing a keg stand here pretty soon, so hopefully we do.
Anytime you run, let's say you run long distance, which I haven't done in a long time, let's say it's 8 miles, or you get to the halfway point and you go one step further, it's a lot easier that second half, even though you're tired. So that's where we get to 50, then we're downhill towards 100, towards Craig and the hat being taken off. We appreciate everybody today. Thanks to a lot of our guests today. There's a guest tomorrow that I wish I could promote, but I just went blank on exactly who it might be. So stay tuned. Appreciate your loyalty to us and commitment to us. Thank you very much for your time. I'm David Smoke for Craig, Garrett, and also Emery. Good night on 365 Sports.